Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Normal America Show. I'm your host, robnoerr. Glad you all could join me today, even though I know no one's joining me right now because I started the stream too early. That's okay. Got a couple minutes here to talk before we start around 7 o'clock. Couple things that I would like my audience to give me some opinions on. First off, do you like the new chat boxes in the window there? Is that preferable to previous chat boxes, or did you like the old style? Some people are saying they have trouble reading the old style. So see if you can give me an opinion on that. Secondly, I am on Rumble now. Now, the Rumble chat won't show up there on the right. I'm working to see what I could do to change that. But for right now, Rumble chat won't show up there. But both at Comfy.Stream, and I'm robnoerr there, or on Rumble, I'm Normal America on Rumble. You can check out both of those, and I'm on those platforms. Eventually, I'll be completely transitioning to those two platforms, away from places like Twitch and YouTube, because places like Twitch and YouTube censor me. So also, it broke some exciting news that, well, I didn't break it, but for me, it's exciting. The link should be there, by the way, if someone types. Let me check here. Does that work? So there's all the links for you. You see my Rumble links on there. The Comfy link, is it on there? Twitch, D-Live. I got to get Comfy on there. D-Live, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter, Patreon, PayPal, Twitch. Yeah. Well, anyways, I'll get Comfy on there. But there's the links to some of my places. Please consider giving me a follow on Rumble. I'd really appreciate it. That and Comfy are going to be the platforms that I'm using the most. Briefly about this evening. One second. Setting up, so I have a debate coming up here with Crowdsourced Politics. And that'll be starting here shortly. I plan on streaming 2 hours, so maybe a little after 9:30 at the latest. I have family here. I'm in a great mood today. Not only is family here, but we're setting up outside Christmas lights. We're waiting to do the Christmas tree until Sunday. So that'll be exciting. But we took my son Hank to see Christmas lights last night and to see Santa Claus today. It was fantastic. Absolutely a blast. I can't. It was very hard to read the old style. Good. Hopefully this style is easier to read. Hopefully it's easier for you. So I had a great day. What I was going to say is some news that broke. So I'm going to be, someone asked, when am I going to be back on with John Burk? So after the year ends, every Friday night, John Burk and I will be hosting Drunken Debates. We're still working out the kinks, how we're going to do it, but what it looks like is going to happen. Traditionally, when John hosted Drunken Debates, he would be the moderator, but also would slightly add his opinions in. We're thinking that we won't do that. Instead, what it looks like is one of us will moderate and the other will debate. And then the following week we'll switch off. And so that way you'll always hear one of us debating and the other will be moderating. Because of that, the one moderating won't have to, don't smudge me, won't have to weigh in as much, because the other one will be there. So that'll be exciting. It's going to be the best debate panel show that has existed and certainly exists now, because we're going to make sure that the guests are vetted and are competent. So you're not going to have 17-year-old lunatics that don't know what they're talking about. It'll actually be competent people from all sides of the issue that can actually debate. In addition to that, it won't be huge panels. It'll be 4 to 6 people. And then every Saturday, time to be determined, probably looking at like the early, right before noon, like 11 a.m. Eastern, John Burk and I will be doing a weekly roundup show together that will probably be exclusive to Rumble. So that's another reason to follow me on Rumble. But yeah, it's exciting. We got some exciting stuff coming up. I think the channel's going to grow. John Burk's incredibly generous to offer to me to be a co-host on those two shows, the Drunken Debate and the weekly roundup show. So I'm very excited. I think it's a chance for me to reach a bigger audience on a consistent basis. I hope that my audience also enjoys that content. John and me have similar political views, but we certainly have differences on issues. We've debated each other before. So I think neither of us are ass kissers. So I think it'll be a great show. I really do. I'm looking forward to it. And I would like, my goals is to grow my audience, to grow John's audience, and to drive people to Rumble and Comfy. That's my goals with these shows. So hopefully we're able to accomplish that, because John, unfortunately, has gotten the axe from Twitch. And a lot of that content that I'm doing with John will be on topics that I can't talk about on Twitch. So it'll be a reason to go there. So you're going to lose me visually for a second, and then we're going to try to get this debate rolling. The debate this evening is with Crowdsourced Politics. I will go over the rules once he starts, or once he comes on. Give me 1 second. Yeah, let's do this for a second. Alrighty. Hey, thank you for the sub. Uh-oh. I don't know if my sound's working. I didn't hear it. Troubling. I'm not hearing anything.
Goodness.
This is the right person.
Oh, there he goes.
1 second, my headset's screwed up.
Let's do, it's at the video. It's the video screen, and then I have to actually turn off.
If you could hear me, I'm just fixing my headset.
There we go.
I don't know what's going on with it.
All right. We should be able to hear you now, Rob. Can you hear me?
Is there a button on here? Can you say something?
Yeah, what's up?
There we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm a boomer. I don't know what I'm doing half the time here. With
all good.
So if you don't mind, I just thought we'd go over real quick.
Sure.
We'll start here. Whenever you're ready, we can start. What I like to do, we're live now, but what I like to do is actually record these, and then I can put a thumbnail up. And it's because sometimes I ramble on about my life before and after. That way it'll just be our debate. So as long as, and you could obviously feel free to use any of the content you want, for anything you need.
Yeah, I'm streaming as well. If you would prefer that not to happen, I can stop streaming, but I was planning on recording as well.
Perfectly fine. No problem at all. Go ahead.
You're using Whereby, but it seems like on my end, it's lagging really bad. Not when we're talking, but I'm saying on OBS, like there seems to be this really bad lag. Do you know how to fix that?
I do not. On my end, it doesn't look like it. Let me ask my audience: do people? Is it look bad there? Does it look like when either me or Cypher are talking? By the way,
yeah.
Do you want me to call you Crowdsourced or Cypher? Does it?
Cypher's fine.
Okay.
As long as people know where my channel is, it's fine.
Okay.
There's more than one person working on it, but right now it's just two of us. There was like 5 people that was part of the podcast. So
if you think that if it's messing up something on your end, we could go through Discord. I don't care.
No, it seems to have caught up now. I'm just a little worried that it might be desynced.
Okay. Yeah, recording. People are saying it looked a little, but it looks good now, but it looked a little slow there originally. So
okay.
So my plan is I'll start recording here in a second. I'll just do a quick introduction. Sure. Then we'll talk about what we're going to do. I figured 2 hours, so I figure we'll start at like 7:15, be done at the latest 9:15. If we end early, that's fine too.
Yeah.
I got some family downstairs, so sometimes I'll be debating someone like Pisco, and I'm here until 4 a.m. I can't do that today, unfortunately. I got family here, so
2 hours is perfectly fine. I was gonna keep 2. I was actually gonna suggest that we start like a timer or something so that we can actually get to both topics. Keep it to an hour.
That's fine.
Each
That's fine.
Section.
We don't.
Whatever.
You can start a timer if you want, but we'll just look. We'll plan. Topic 1 will start at 7:10. Topic 2 starts at 8:10.
Yeah, that's perfectly acceptable.
And so that'll give us time for an intro.
I am going to go ahead and go to my channel really quick and see if it's looks like it's lagging on my end.
Okay.
So.
Like I said, if we have to switch, everyone says it looks good, but they're watching through my channel, so I don't know if.
And it's it could be my system. I might need to restart my computer.
Okay.
Which would suck, but yeah, I'm getting really bad frame drops through OBS. So I'm gonna see if I can like exit out some programs here, and but yeah, it should be fine. But I don't know what's going on with it. So
well, just let me know when
yeah, sure. Let me just do this really quick. Yeah, it might just be as simple as me restarting OBS.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna see if it's lagging on my channel. And if it is, then I'll be back and we'll restart.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to close out. Of my stream, everybody. I'll still be here, but I'm gonna close out of OBS. Everybody, I'll be right back. If you're watching on my stream, we just want to make sure that we have.
Yeah. So I sing some Christmas songs to my audience here.
Drop stream. And then let's go do this.
I don't know if you guys like Christmas stuff. You ready for a little after hours, taking some clothes off? You ready for this? My favorite like Christmas movie character is Heat Miser. I got my shirt here. It says Hothead. This is from Year Without a Santa Claus. And my son Hank has got one with Snow Miser on it, and it says Cool Dude. So I'm Hothead. He's Cool Dude. That's what we went and saw Santa Claus today. It was a lot of fun. So I hope you prepared. I know I was off watching Santa Claus, but hopefully you weren't. Hopefully you were preparing. What's up, Omar? How you doing, man? This is not a Christmas shirt.
Okay, I might have to update OBS. That's really bad. It's not because I don't think it's because we're using whereby.
Okay.
But
if you want to try Discord, if you think trying Discord is something that might work, we could do that.
Let me try. You know what? We might have to start at 7:15.
That's fine.
I have an update from my graphic driver as well, so that could be also what it is. So I'm just gonna restart my computer real quick, clear out the cache and whatever, and I'll be back. Okay.
So, all right.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I'll talk to my audience. So, Year Without a Santa Claus. That's a movie I've seen. There we go. Now you get me full shot. The first topic has not been chosen. So to rehash, if you're just joining, we're going to be doing a debate. I'll explain the rules of the debate as I see them when we start. But suffice it to say, it's going to be a 2-hour debate. It is his show for the first hour as far as I'm concerned. He is in charge. If he wants to talk 85 to 90% of the time, fine. If he wants to steer the direction to any topic that he wants, absolutely fine. I hope that he's reasonable. Like it'll be worthless if it's just him screaming and shouting over me the whole time. But if he thinks that I'm too wordy and he wants to ask me questions and direct the show, that's fine. I have no idea what his topics are. He has not told me. He merely said he wants to talk about policy. So be it. The impetus for this debate was I found that he was getting blown out on a Twitter feed about January 6th and what was going on. He accused people of being in a bubble and being liars. And then it turned out that he was absolutely wrong about the specific thing they were talking about regarding people bringing zip ties, which they did not. They found zip ties while they were there. And then I asked him if that meant he was a liar or in a bubble. He said no, he was just misinformed. I said, what else are you misinformed about? And he said he didn't want to talk about it. And then finally we came to an agreement that if I would talk policy, he would talk about January 6th. So my topic will be, as he knows, January 6th, the FBI's involvement, And then perhaps, depending on how long we have, we'll branch out into other instances of FBI corruption. But I need make no secret of the topics that we will talk about. I am perfectly comfortable to talk about whatever topic he wants, regardless of the amount of time he's prepared. Now I'm desynced. Anyone else? Are you seeing me out of sync? Let me know if I'm looking out of sync for anyone else. On my end, everything looks good. It doesn't look like I'm dropping frames or anything. Slightly. I don't know. Maybe it's whereby. I just don't know. It's unfortunate. Maybe I'll have to switch to StreamYard or something. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Sounds and looks great, yeah. It was for like 2 seconds. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's my shitty computer. Anyways, that's what the debate's going to be, so. Yeah, everyone's saying I'm good. Yeah, if it starts desyncing, maybe refresh. I don't know. But that's what the debate will be. Like I said, the first hour, he could take it in any direction he wants. I don't care. My hope is when people debate me now, they do their research, because if it's going to be something that's like, here's what I mean by that. If you're telling people they're in a bubble and they're liars on a certain topic, and then you agree to debate me on it, I hope that if you're going to be that strongly opinionated, that you have looked into it somewhat. That's not means that he's seen everything about it or me. I'm not saying that. And I hope that if you're picking a topic that you're passionate about and you haven't divulged to me what that topic will be, that you're prepared to talk about it. I hope that's the case. Because I'm tired of debating people, and as soon as you scratch the surface of an issue, they go, I don't know anything. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about it. It is, I appreciate, and I'll let Crowdsourced Politics, or Cypher as he's going by, I'll let him know I do appreciate him coming on to debate. But I will say this, it has been a bad showing from people that I've interacted with on Twitter who talked a big game and then came on to debate me. It has not been good for them most of the time. Sometimes people fare much better when we've set up debates one-on-one. I think I always do quite well, but a lot of times then you'll see people that actually know what they're talking about on a topic. But the Twitter braggarts seem to never do well. So hopefully I'm pleasantly surprised this evening, and it's actually a good debate. But like I said, I'm willing to talk about any policy. And it could be that it'll be something that I just know nothing about, and I'll be like, explain it to me. I'll give you my honest opinion. Because certainly I don't claim to be a policy wonk when it comes to like every policy that's ever been crafted. All I could do is give my authentic opinion, and hopefully it'll be entertaining because there'll be disagreement. And seeing as how he's a lefty, I think there will be disagreement. I doubt we'll align much on policy. Omar says, my opinion on cinema. Yeah, it turns out when you chase people into bathrooms and call them horrible people, they're less likely to want to be part of your party. I guess that's my opinion on it. So if you're just joining me, Crowdsourced Politics, also going by the name Cypher, is going to be joining me for a debate. It'll be a 2-hour debate once we get going. There we go.
Hopefully that. So I updated.
Check it out. Let me know.
Yes. Yeah, we'll see. Let's get it some time to process the screen. Why is it taking so long to render? Okay. Try this.
If you want, we could do audio only, and you could do your face to your audience, and we can call them through.
No,
Google
I don't
Voice.
think that's. I don't think that's necessarily necessary.
Okay.
Let me try setting this up through a different way. Let's go to Chrome rather than second monitor. Turn off the second monitor. And then do that.
Second monitor? What, are you made of money in this economy?
Well, my work monitor.
By the way, to my audience here, for those that care, I had been telling you about my work computer, my laptop that I have when I'm not at home, that I used to stream from, and the repairman thought it was the motherboard. It was not. He only charged me like $60, and he thinks he has it fixed. So I haven't turned it on since I got it back. I've been really busy today, but that was good news. I thought it was going to be like, I thought it was going to be a couple, like $700-800. So, oh, like Aftershock, your 3 monitors. Arthur 3 Sheds Jackson over here. Come on.
Yeah, it didn't help. But it seems to be a little more synced now, but I'm super desynced. We can just go. I
mean, honest to goodness, if you just want to do like a Google Voice call, if you want to try Discord, here's what I want your stream to be as good as possible for you and your audience.
Yeah.
So if that means they're just hearing me audio, I don't have a problem with that. And then we could share links that we need or something in Discord if we're sharing evidence.
I didn't know that that's what we'd be doing. I didn't really.
Well, no, I don't think. Well, when it comes to the topic that I'm going to be talking about, I saw you posting links to articles that basically say the opposite of what the headline said. So I figured you'd bring it up, and I was going to go through it for you and explain why. No, actually, the FBI didn't. The FBI didn't warn people, even though you keep posting that link. They didn't. But we'll see how it goes. It's up to you. Do you want to try to just do Google Voice?
Let's try. If you're worried about Discord, yeah, we can just do Google Voice. But if you can do Discord hasn't really been. Let's
try Discord first.
I'm in your channel there.
Let's do Discord first. That works for me.
And if it still doesn't work, then it's just my computer, and I got to figure out what's wrong with it.
Okay. So just while we can still hear each other, I'll just say this in case something goes wrong on Discord. If something goes wrong, check your Twitter message too. I'll send you my number on Google Voice if you need, and then we can talk through there. But yeah, I'm going to end this right here, then we'll try Discord if that works for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Sorry about this.
No problem. No problem. All right, 1 second. Leave. Okay. All right, give me a second, everyone. We'll see if we get this rolling. This stuff happens. I can't fault anyone. Goodness knows I'm horrid when it comes to... Oh, crap. You know what I forgot to tell him? Does he want to do my Discord channel, or does he want to do a direct Discord link? I should have asked that. Always screwing up. Hopefully he's on my channel. Come on, Rob. I think he's called in before. Tech problem. Everybody loves it. What's this? This isn't this guy, is it? Jeez. Now I'm getting offers for people to talk to me. Who would have thunk it? Let's see. Search. Oh, come on. I do apologize for this, everyone. Not his fault. I don't blame him, but it's not my fault, right? That's probably him. There we go. Found him.
A call. Okay. Let me get that set up. So yeah, as soon as I dropped from Whereby,
the Discord link. I sent you Crowdsourced. If you listen, I sent you a direct call on Discord, so you don't even need to go through my channel.
Yeah, no, I got the call. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. You on the call?
Okay,
here?
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the call. I couldn't find your. I don't know what the hell happened, but I got to figure out how to get this.
No. Whoo! What was that? Good God. Let's try that again. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's going on?
Hello.
Can.
Good goodness. Fuck. Yes, your audio was going crazy there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you not hear? Maybe I'm not.
Yeah, I know the screen's black. I'm waiting.
There we go. Can you not hear me?
I got a weird humming noise that's coming through.
Weird humming noise?
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I guess.
Weird humming noise coming through. If
Can you hear me better now? It's output.
Okay, the humming noise ended.
Can you hear me again, or is the humming noise back?
Okay, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little muted. Let me check. Yeah, there's a lot of feedback sometimes coming through. Let me check, make sure.
Maybe because you sound like you're in a bubble to me, as well. So maybe your settings got messed up or something.
Your audio keeps cutting out on me too. I can't hear you now. Check. Check your Discord audio settings. Holy, this is like instead of a debate, it's become a troubleshooting on. You think it's my Discord settings? Let me check. I can't hear you. Let me check my settings again. But my settings should be good. Headphones. Yeah, let's check. Check.
Because you changed your audio output.
All right. Check. All right. I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, when you were first talking, it sounded like you were using a different microphone.
Yeah, I switched it up. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
We good? Is it gonna? It's working good through your channel?
It's working like 20 times better. So just give me like 1 second while I get set up for this, because I haven't used direct calls on this. So I gotta pop out, see if I can get this to work. Oh, cool. It's gonna be the same way. Sweet. So podcast and video, and then I can just do that. There we go. We're good.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hit record. I'll do a brief introduction, explain what I think is going to happen in the debate, like sort of the framework for the debate. If you disagree, that's fine. So I will just let me start recording here in 1 second. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. So I am robnoerr. You're probably watching on my show if you're finding this on my channel, but it show's Normal America with robnoerr. Tonight, I will be debating Cypher from Crowdsourced Politics. We're going to have several topics that we'll be talking about. Just to explain how the debate came about, there was a discussion going on about January 6th on a Twitter thread that I had started, and we sort of came to an agreement to talk about January 6th and issues like that after we had a discussion about policy. So, Cypher, if you're okay with it, I thought the framework for the debate would be as follows. We're going to do 2 hours. The first hour is totally yours. We can do whatever topic you want. You are the moderator / debater. If you need to cut me off, if you want to, if you think I'm taking up too much time, whatever, you're in charge. We will start as soon as we're done with this. We'll say it starts roughly 7:25. That will go until 8:25. We'll wrap up. And then at that point, we'll start the second topic. I don't know what topics you want to talk about. For me, we will be talking about FBI corruption and January 6th, but That's the way I see it. As long as you're fine with that framework, I'm good to go and leave you have take control until 8:25.
Yeah, I'm more than happy with that. That sounds like a good plan. So just about what I kind of want to talk about, I want to see mainly if there's like anything we can actually agree on. I'm not looking like to debate policy necessarily, but I want to see like, okay, for instance, right? So I wanted to talk about a little bit of immigration. You and I are never going to agree on the wall. You want a wall, I don't want a wall. There's no point in discussing it, right? It's that simple. But maybe there's other stuff that we can agree on. So absent Trump or anybody else building a wall or some sort of barrier, fencing or whatever. What other immigration policy? Because I don't know much about your immigration stances. I only know some of the stuff that you've actually like debated other people on, but that's not really telling much, right? You're responding to how people are responding to you, and there's going to be shit being flung back and forth. Like that's just the nature of debates. So I was like wondering what kind of other policies you'd like to see implemented, and see if there's any how much daylight's between us.
Okay, I'll give an overview on my thoughts on immigration. I'll try to be as quick as possible. I think that until we secure the border, that is a precursor to any immigration policies. I think that there is a movement by elite people around the world to sort of erode national borders, and they want to do so they can consolidate power. One of the biggest stumbling blocks they see that is first world countries, and so they want to erode those borders because it's good for corporations, it's good for globalists to just have a one world system. I think that a country cannot sustain itself without borders, and so I think that border security is a precursor to any sort of questions. There are things other than the wall we could do for border security. I think one of the most effective things, even more effective than a wall, would be punishing employers that are knowingly hiring illegal immigrants. But in general, I will say this: hypothetically, if you don't want to talk about border security and stuff, that's fine. But let's say hypothetically it happened, and so that precursor is done. What would I like to see with immigration? I think that the dreamers, the people that are here through no fault of their own, their children, should be allowed to stay. I think that people that are illegals, it is infeasible to kick. There's probably over 30 million illegals in this country now. I think it's infeasible to kick that many out. So I don't think they should be given citizenship and the right to vote unless they do some extraordinary service like military service or public service. But I think they should be allowed to stay as guests until they break a serious law. I don't mean jaywalking or a parking ticket or speeding. I mean serious, like a serious law. And I think that legal immigration, there is room for legal immigration, but it should be a merit-based system solely. It should not be based on that we think the United States owes people in other countries anything. And I think that we need to relook at sort of the refugee programs we have in this country because they are massively exploited. And unfortunately, because of the bad faith people that have exploited those systems, that means we need to halt an acceptance of refugees until we could make sure that that system's non-exploitable.
Okay. So I think there's some stuff on there we can agree with. I like I said, I don't want to talk about the border wall itself, but border security things, maybe there's stuff we can agree with there as well. I understand that you're like, hey, until this is done, we can't talk about anything else. But in the reality of the situation, because of how the Congress is set up, just inherently set up, and with the filibuster and everything else, there's gonna have to be compromise of some sort. Now, if you're not willing to compromise on the wall, not you, but I'm saying in general, you, not you specifically, then there's no bridge there, right? But if there's other things absent, like a giant wall, maybe that can actually be done. So when you say border security, what, like you said specifically, fining employers that hire people illegally or some other kind of mechanism for that, right? I can agree with that. I think that's actually what we should be doing. We should be going after employers that are hiring people illegally, because at the end of the day, they're mostly exploiting these people anyways. They're exploiting them and then in turn exploiting the rest of us, right? So, but at the same time, when I say that, I'd also think that we probably should have a bigger, more robust guest worker program. Not because we don't have like enough people in the United States to fill every job, although that seems to be the case now, but because economies ebb and flow. Like if there's a, say for example, we're into like a super tight, like even in a tighter labor market than we're in right now. And we need people to fill jobs. It doesn't matter what kind of jobs, like any job, right? That should be what we do. We should fill those jobs. We should train people to take those jobs. But in the interim, you have to fill them somehow. That's where a guest worker program comes in. So I don't see, I see that as a thing that we could do.
Guest worker, like, I think that it's overused right now, and I think it's overused because we allow these employers to get away. For me, a lot of the left-wing perspective on this is sort of hypocritical, right? Because like I wrote a big article on this one time, like Bernie Sanders' immigration policy. There's two contradictory arguments people make. One, it's humane to allow these illegals here. And second, the price of your produce and everything would go through the roof if we didn't have this. That's tantamount to saying, well, we should have slave labor to keep down the prices of your produce. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to, pay a few cents less for my apples off the sweat and tears off of some illegal immigration that's being exploited by some agricultural company.
Sure.
I don't have an interest in that. So, for me, the guest worker program, the reason it seems like it needs more robust is because of the exploitation I think that we see. If these people weren't, if they were forced to pay a competitive wage, these companies, then Americans would do the work. However, and I'll just say this briefly, this system is intertwined with another massive problem that's been caused by left-wing politics, which is our burdensome and generous welfare system. We currently pay people to stay at home in an unbelievable way. And then when no one wants to work, we say, look at that. We need to bring in immigrants to do work because Americans aren't willing to do them. If we stopped forcing these welfare systems in the way we had, then people would not be able to just sit at home and they would go out and get these jobs.
Yeah. So there's where we can debate some here. So, first of all, like I said, I agree with you. We should go after employers hiring people illegally and any sort of exploitation that happens at all. We're 100% in agreement with that. I don't know what you mean by people exploiting the current guest worker program. Are you saying that because because there's all the illegal immigrants that are currently working at places that's the exploitation, and if we get rid of that, then there's not exploitation with the guest worker? Or are you saying there's a guest worker exploitation in of itself?
A lot of the industries that are using the guest worker program are using that to hide how many illegal immigrants that they also have working for them, which allows them to have reduced wages.
That's weird.
If they did not have the guest worker or the illegal immigrants, they would be forced to pay higher wages to be competitive with the labor market in other industries, which would mean more Americans would do those jobs.
So that's a fair point. So again, we agree there. So if that's the case, then what would you consider a fair wage for a farmhand, for lack of a better term for it?
Well, it's a difficult question. I don't know. The market sets these things. What would I consider a fair wage for anything? I guess the wage that people would be willing to do the job versus the skill and the labor level necessary to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, I hear people say this all the time. Like, I live in an area, I've never made $20 an hour my entire life. Up until I do home health care with people with developmental disabilities, right? So I made around $15 an hour for the last 3-4 years of my life. They had a special program at my job that allowed me to get a $3 raise. So I make around 19 something now an hour. I hear people say this all the time. Well, where I'm from, people wouldn't pick fruit for $30 an hour. Well, not where I'm from. $30 an hour would get people off their ass here. I can tell you that, because the average wage around here, I can't remember. I looked this up at one point. I think the average household income in my area is something like $32,000 a year.
Right.
$30 an hour is way above that. And there are people doing backbreaking labor, farm labor, etc. for that wage here. So it's difficult to say what would a fair wage be. Fair. Well, it would be competitive, and the market sort of sorts that out. They would be forced to pay, let's say, for example, that this labor is grueling. It's the worst labor ever. Then they'd have to pay a lot, because people aren't going to go to work for some grueling wage if they can go to Walmart and get paid more. So in that instance, maybe a fair wage is $25 an hour. Maybe it's not. You have to weigh things, though. How laborious the job is, how much skill is required.
Oh yeah, all that.
But it's driven down artificially right now because of the flux of illegal immigration and guest workers.
Yeah, no, I don't think we disagree there either. I just don't know what the market is actually willing to bear here, because part of the illegal immigration hiring is part of the free market working, right? Like, if the government didn't have any rules or regulations on that at all, they would just hire people that would be willing to do work for the lowest wage. Like, I think you can agree with that.
Well, but again, like, then you're not arguing with an ANCAP. I'm not saying the government shouldn't exist.
No, I know.
Right. We should have a limited government. And one of the most basic functions of a government is to secure borders, to make sure that we allow the people that are citizens here. Okay. The government's purely an entity representing us that are citizens of the United States. That's it. Right. They should have our interests first and foremost. If it is determined after we end this corruption and sort of the people pushing for open borders, the X number of guest workers would be best for the financial health of the country and the best for the majority of people, so be it. But that decision should be based solely on what is best for the people of this country and not at all on what is best for illegal immigrants, guest workers, etc.
Okay, I mean that's fair. I don't have any disagreement there. I'm just curious, like, so there has been this was during, I want to say it was during Obama's last term for the year I'm talking about. I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on that. But there was several articles coming out at the time about what people were trying, because there was a worker shortage in the farming industry due to a combination of people, more enforcement of that from Obama's administration, as well as Mexico actually doing better economically, and so people returning home and going back to where they actually want to live, right, rather than working thousands of miles away from their loved ones. And one particular farmer in this instance, and I know it's anecdote, so it doesn't really matter, but I'm just curious what your thoughts about it are, said that he couldn't get a person to stay for more than like 2 weeks offering $22 an hour to pick vegetables.
Why? Why do you think that is?
The work is it's hella hard. It's
so then should we be exploiting? Should we be exploiting?
I'm not saying that we should. I'm not saying that we should. I'm saying, like, they obviously, to me, they should be paying more. That's also going to increase the cost of everything everybody else is paying as well. It's like there's trade-offs to everything. I'm not saying that they should exploit people. I'm 100% against
all of these things. I mean, again, it comes down to a question of motivation. So I forget the guy's name. I don't have. If you want me to dig for this source, I can. But one of the best people that have looked at this, and he sort of excoriated Trump for citing his work because he's by no means a conservative. I forget the name of this particular immigration expert, but he basically says that it's basically a wash with illegal immigration, that it does raise the GDP, it does benefit the extremely wealthy, the business owners, and it certainly benefits the illegals or the guest workers. But which there is a difference. I'm not lumping them in. I understand that. I just want everyone to know. I understand a guest worker is not illegal, but that's sort of bringing in labor from outside, right? That's what we're talking about. But the people, that money isn't just basically all good for everyone. The people that are negatively affected are low-skilled labor in this country, and that's predominantly inner-city Black Americans, where a lot of guest workers and illegals end up settling. So the very group that the Democrats claims to care the most about, poor people in the inner city, those are the ones that end up paying the burden. Meanwhile, this is why Republicans have been for lax border security, because their business interests that are donating to them, they're more than happy to have the cheap labor, right? And so I'm unpersuaded when some business owner goes, well, we tried to pay Americans a wage, but they wouldn't accept it because it's so backbreaking labor. It's like, that argument's not persuasive to me, because it's immoral to say, well, then we should have some, brown person from the third world come do that labor so I can have my avocado toast. I don't buy that, and as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of work that's backbreaking labor and terrible. My job is mentally exhausting, not physically exhausting, but dealing with people with autism and other things like that. Yeah. And I'm there sometimes. I average usually about 75 hours a week. It could be mentally exhausting. People don't like doing it. We're having trouble finding people. But the primary reason that we're having trouble finding people is because you don't have to work anymore. You could stay at home and somehow find a government program to pay for you.
Let's talk about that. So how do you believe welfare actually works?
Well, there's a lot of
let's try to break it down then. What is one of the primary ways you think that welfare allows people to stay at home? Because there's limits on it. So sure. there's limits on it. So it's not forever, but you're saying that it's allowing them to do that. What is it primarily that's doing that for you?
Well, sure. There's all sorts of welfare programs. For example, there is an incentive to be single parents. There's an incentive to be single mothers.
Well, what incentive?
You get government money based on how many children you have in your home if you don't have a father in the home.
I don't believe that that's the case. I've heard that a lot, true. And I looked it up. It's not based on the number of kids. There's different cutoffs.
I can tell you right now, I have to be careful because I don't want to out a specific person here, but I can tell you right now that I'm aware of someone recently that has one child, and that child is nearing teenage, and they are currently paying, this mother works and single, that this mother is currently paying for childcare while they're at work. And now that they're having another kid, they will not have to pay for childcare for the second kid, and they also will no longer have to pay for childcare for the first kid. They will also be getting increased WIC and food stamps that will be coming to them. So much so, and I've known people that this has happened, that what happens is that actually they intentionally cut back the hours they're working because it cuts into their food stamp budget. And so they make the choice to say, well, if I worked a full shift, if I worked 40 hours and was full time, then that means I get less food stamps. So instead I'll work 15 hours. That way I can get the food stamps.
It's the cliff issue. The way the welfare is administered is pretty crappy. The end of welfare, as we know it under Clinton, didn't actually fix anything. It just made it to where you had a time limit. And so, you got your benefits and then they got exhausted after, I believe it's 5 years. Some states have some play with that. So I think some states are a little less, a little more, but not by much, right? 5 years is pretty much the standard, at least for TANF. So, which is temporary assistance for needy families. That's direct cash payments and things like that. Single individuals.
It's not just, please, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, it's okay. Single individuals also have a cap on that, as well as food stamps, and a variety of other programs as well, right? So the kids, maybe I think the kids you can get like so much food stamps for a particular amount of kids, but after like 2 or so, it's like the same amount.
I don't think so.
Say.
It might
WIC,
not
I can't
increase.
Say,
let me ask you bluntly. Like, it might not go up per kid, but it certainly goes up in some of the total amount of kids you have. For example, if I get $1,000 a month for one kid, maybe having 2 kids, I get $1,050 a month for each kid. But you're saying if I have a third kid, I still only get $2,100? That's not true. They're giving me money for that third kid.
It depends on a whole host of different things. I have a person in my chat saying right now that their child was a single mom for a long time and wasn't able to get anything. So again, it depends on situations. Maybe they were making money.
Depend
maybe
on
they
their
weren't.
That's but I mean, think about what you're saying. Doesn't even make sense though. Like maybe I misinterpreted.
It wouldn't be any
generous.
It wouldn't be any $2,000 a month.
Well, look at it this way though. Like, I'm just using a hypothetical round number.
Yeah,
right?
I gotcha.
Like, let's say
let's try to get it.
Well, real quick,
I think it's like
let me tell you.
or something. Yeah, go.
Okay, let's say 800. That's fine. Let's say my wife, I tragically die tomorrow in a car wreck, and so my wife is a single mom, and we have one kid, and the government's like, we'll give you $800 in various programs for your kid, right? And then she has a second kid, and they're like, fuck that kid, we're not giving any money. Like, it's not happening. Right? There's no way that's, if she's already qualified as a single parent for that one kid, they're not going to be like, sorry, we're just not going to give for the second kid. Unless there was some sort of extenuating circumstance, like she came into money or something. But I'm unaware of what the situation even hypothetically would be, that if they say you need help for one kid, that they would not increase the help if you have a second kid. The only situation that would make sense is if you came into money, but then they'd take away the help from the first kid.
Even if that's the case, I just don't see it. It's not one of those situations to me where each child is like a net benefit, right? Because there's limits on the total amount of compensation that you can get, and even if each kid adds money, it's not enough to outweigh the cost of that child. Now, I said I can't speak of WIC because everybody basically qualifies for WIC. WIC is specifically there to help nutrition in utero, and then I think it's 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically when you're supposed to be breastfeeding the child to ensure that they have enough. I mean,
I think that I'll just say that, again, I don't have the number. If you want to get into sort of numbers and stuff, we could try. I could just tell you this. I think that almost everyone, if they're being honest, will say that they've seen a situation like this. I have anecdotally seen single mothers that have 6-7 kids whose kids are running around in clothes better than 2-parent households that are struggling and working because the amount of money that's given to these people, you can see the it's true. You can say no, it's true.
You don't know where they're getting the clothes from. It's not from government assistance. It could be potentially from donations or something like that, but the government assistance is simply not government assistance.
Government assistance, but it's part of it, right? It's part of it.
Not only that.
Let me be clear just real quick, right? It's not just welfare, direct welfare payments or direct food stamp payments. There's all sorts of other assistance programs that are exploited, such as disability programs. But regardless of the reason, and we could continue to debate the reasons, there is no denying that the labor participation rate is down. So you have to explain at this point, right, where everyone has help wanted signs in every town. I see them all over. There are every fast food place in my little town. It has signs up that says we sometimes have to close early because we can't find people to work, right? But the labor participation rate is down. How can that be? If they're not being, how are these people surviving if they're not making enough through government assistance and other means to stay home?
Well, I mean, maybe they're just getting help from family. I know a lot of people that have just lived at home. I mean, and that's just a fact. Like they're living at home, or they're being on one income at this point.
Okay,
but it's not government assistance. There's not enough of it. It's simply untrue. You cannot survive on government assistance in most of the country. And I'm saying most of the country because I can't say the particulars of each and every single state and how they administer their own additional welfare benefits. So that's why I'm saying most. But federally
labor
speaking,
participation, right? In the 90s,
we can talk. There's going to be all sorts of reasons for that. So during the pandemic, a lot of people retired early, so they're no longer working. There's been, believe it or not, crypto booms and busts have actually helped people retire. As shitty as that is, I don't like it, but it's true. And then there's also, and I don't want to debate this topic because I think it's going to go forever. But there's also long COVID that's taking people out of the workforce. So you can't just do a direct one-to-one. And
I just disagree, especially when we
retiring early.
Okay, I disagree. When we see that people are struggling with the cause of inflation, right? It seems that, like, if your logic is true, right, it would be incredible then because this cost of living is going up at a very high rate. Inflation's going up very high, and it has been for over a year now, right? But for some reason now, more than previously, people can afford to just be like, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to retire early. I'm going to rely on my family and things like that. And government assistance hasn't increased. The government assistance isn't allowing me to stay at home. Who are all these families that 2 years ago couldn't afford to provide for family members, but now with increased inflation can?
Who said they weren't?
It seems odd to me.
Who said they weren't? Like, you also have to take into effect that people age into the labor force every day as well. So when we have the biggest generation, the echo boomers are in their prime age labor force, but they also go to school longer. So they're not actually in the labor force until later, but they're counted as being in the labor force, or being, negatively counted against the labor force. And then every single Gen Z person, the oldest Gen Z person is 26 years old. The youngest is, I don't know the exact cutoff, but I want to say it's 16. And so they're in the labor force, right? So if we have two generations that enter the actual labor force later than usual because of going to college or what have you, a lot less people. I think you can agree with this. A lot less teenagers work in industries while in high school than they did in like the 80s. Would you say that's fair?
Yes.
Okay. So, but every single 16-year-old, as soon as they turn 16, are added to the labor force.
Okay. Right.
So how many more people is that, do you think?
Well, it's based on percentage, so it's not just an individual number, right? So it's based on the percentage
but I'm saying
of the people. But the reason that
if the number doubles.
So what?
If the number doubles.
So why was it in the 80s that six? Right. Okay. If the number doubles, but the population doubled, then it wouldn't be anything. I'm not saying the population doubles, but you could. Right. And the number didn't double either. Right. And the question is, why were those people working in the 80s, but they're not now? What changed?
The need for education beyond high school in order to have a middle class lifestyle.
And that's not all that changed. Also, the fact that there is a lot of people working older, and so many of those jobs that were required in order to that were for younger people are now being taken up by older people, such as a lot of cashier jobs at places like Walmart. 10 years ago, you would see a lot of 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds. Now you see a lot of 60, 70-year-olds, for example. And also the labor participation rate doesn't take into account people that now have to work two jobs, right? So, for example, the average age of labor at this point, the median age is 42. In 2001, that age was 39, right? So we can see that the idea that people are retiring early and that's what's leading the labor force, no, they're actually working later. So if the average median... No, real quick, if the median age has increased 3 years, then the idea that, okay, 16-year-olds aren't working as much, well, if the average age of retirement used to be 65, but now the median age has been pushed 3 years, then instead of looking at 16-year-olds working, that would be offset by 68-year-olds working.
Not entirely.
How do you know?
Because the numbers don't add up.
Well, what we know is
you're assuming you have to assume that there is a 1-to-1 for that to work. You have to assume that for every non-working teenager, there's one working retired person or somebody that should be retired.
Well, that might be true, but the assumption starts with you. Like, we have the raw data, we can see that labor force participation's down, and you make the claim. Labor force
participation is down. Yes,
right.
And
I'm
making the claim that a large swath between 16, I'll have to dig up the numbers again, but I did the math when Trump was talking about in 2017 about labor force or whatever. What it boiled down to is that there was roughly, these numbers are rough estimates because they're off of my memory, but I did the math. So there's roughly 2 million people that are stay-at-home parents. They're negatively counted to the working force participation rate. There's roughly 3 to 4 million people that are in school that are not working at all. Those are negatively counted in the labor force participation rate. The number of people that retired early, that is anybody between the age of 50 and 62, I think it's when they start considering it retiring early, not 65, despite that's when all the benefits kick in. That was another 3 or 4 million people. And then and then there was a lot more older people because people are just aging. So that also negatively impacts the labor force participation rate. Because you're looking for how many people are supporting the economy versus how many people aren't working.
Again,
so I don't think those numbers.
I get what I'm saying. It's smoke and mirrors, because what you're doing here is you're saying, well, there's all these factors that lead to a declining labor force participation. I'm saying yes, but there are factors that are mitigating against that, such as people that are working longer, people that are working 2 jobs, etc., things like that. And you're like,
people working
people working
2 jobs?
People working 2 jobs doesn't affect labor force participation. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that influences why younger people aren't working as much, because a lot of people are working older or working a second job. Right. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is this. You aren't giving any direct data. We know the raw numbers of the labor force participation is down, particularly since 2000. Like, we could see that the numbers have sharply dropped then. You're saying, well, the reason is it's just because young people don't want to work anymore and a couple other factors. But you're not giving.
There's more.
Yeah, real quick, right? And then I say, well, there's people that are working older, and you say, well, you have to prove that the people that are working older directly 1-for-1 are these younger people. But I would have to say that actually the proof starts with you. You have to prove that the younger people that are taking off and weigh that against the people that are working longer is directly the 1-to-1, which led to the lower labor force participation. You're unable to prove that. And when I point to mitigating numbers, you say, well, you can't prove it's 1-to-1. Of course, because you can't prove that it's 1-to-1.
No. I don't need to prove that it's 1-to-1. If it's 1-to-1, then no, I'm saying that doesn't benefit my claim. But if it's 1-to-1, that benefits your claim. If it's not 1-to-1, that benefits mine. If it's
1-to-1 meaning, 1-to-1 is not the right word to it. You need to prove that a drop, for example, from 2000 when we had a labor force participation of 66.8 to today when we have a labor force participation almost more than 6 points lower at 62.3. You have to prove that the reason for that is because 16-year-olds don't work, because they choose not to work because of education.
It's not just 16-year-olds. It's people between the ages of 16 and 24, the number of people that have retired earlier, the number of people that are not single working, the number of people that are stay-at-home parents, and the one that I forgot, and this is a big one, is roughly the 3 or 4 million people. Is it 3 or 4 million? We'll just say 3 million. 3 million people that are on disability that are also counted negatively against the workforce. Now, you can say there might be issues with disability system, and maybe it's too generous. And I can point to anecdotes that showed you, like, this person waited for like 5 years before they were approved, and they could barely fucking walk that entire time, right? The system's fucked. We don't pay enough for the systems that we want to have. Well, I think you and I can agree that we want, a robust, when I say robust, I mean like not consonant, sorry. When I say robust, what I mean is like every single thing is investigated in a timely manner to give people that deserve it, that need it, disability. I think we can agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in order to do that, we have to hire more people, and we don't. So that's why we have these weird fuck ups where you have one person sitting on the sidelines for 5 years while another person's like, whatever, I'm done with this case. I'm retiring in 2 years. I'm going to just prove everybody, right? Like that's part of the reason why we don't have this.
The system's exploited, to say, well, we would need new people working to make sure the system isn't exploited. There are other ways that we could do things. For example, the government has regress and overspending, and also we're hiring 80,000 new IRS agents to go after your $600 Venmo.
That's not why 80,000 is being hired.
That's what's happening.
No,
they're not going after the rich.
I'm not.
They're not going after the rich.
The 80,000 number. No. Let me finish. The 80,000 number isn't agents isn't all agents that are looking at taxes, because the IRS calls everybody that works there an agent. So this number includes people that take the phone call when you're trying to bitch at the IRS for not getting your tax return in a timely manner. It also includes people that have to manually look at taxes for paying out people that are owed by the government.
What percentage
for
of
their taxes
of the new agents?
I would say probably at least 50%, at least.
Okay,
because that's where most of the people are.
So I just want to be clear. So you'll say that. So when people say, because this was the Democrat argument we heard, we need these new people so that we could go after the wealthy because they're not paying their fair share.
Yeah, that's a talking point.
Right, you're admitting that's bullshit.
No, I'm admitting that you do need more people, but it's not all 80,000 of those people.
So half of those people that were hired are definitely not going to be going after the wealthy. They're just taking phone calls.
Probably, yeah. Taking phone calls, processing paperwork, etc. Because the IRS has been gutted since 2002 and hasn't had a budget increase in a percentage-wise budget increase in a long time. It's been one of those death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing that Republicans
right.
Like to do.
We need less IRS agents, right? And the IRS agents
Why do we need
going
less?
Because the IRS is another politicized group that is going after people, going after low and middle class people more than the extremely wealthy that lobby to the very people. And that's what these new IRS agents will do as well, which is why they're not concerned about Sam Bankman-Fried. They're concerned about $599 for your Venmo.
Okay.
Funds.
So Bankman-Fried, fuck that guy. We can agree to that. He should be in prison. Excuse me. Sorry, I got the burps today. Ate pizza for dinner. So Bankman-Fried should be in prison. CoffeeZilla, if nobody's watched that interview that he got 4 interviews. Anyway, it's total like an hour basically of talk time with him over on Twitter Spaces. Guy admitted to fraud. It's funny. So he definitely should be in prison. And that's another issue of not having enough people in the government to do it.
It's a lie.
When I say that, I don't mean him specifically. I mean in general. Just
that's
him specifically. He admitted it.
I could prove that's a bullshit statement. You want to know how? You tell me? Maybe you'll have a different take on this. The talking point I hear is this: that we would actually increase revenue if we have more agents to go after this, because the big fish, the very wealthy that you would get the majority of revenue from, they are able to get away with this thing because we don't have enough agents looking into them. Correct?
And the reason, just to be clear though, the reason for that is because they use shell companies to hide all their money, and that actually takes analysts to go through that use complicated math and other systems that require actual skills to do rather than phone calls.
So let's say then we had 10,000 IRS agents, and those 10,000 agents currently right now, I know that's not the number, but we'll just say hypothetically we have a small number of agents. Right? And those agents have two choices. They could either, one, go after the big fish, which means there would be less people that they could audit, less people that they could go after, but at the end of the day, they would get greater revenue. Or they could go after the small guy that's making $30,000 a year and squeeze the turnip to try to get a couple bucks from them. Can you explain to me why they do the latter instead of the former right now?
Okay, I'm sorry. So
why do they go after? Let me make it clear. If we need more agents, if I only had 100 agents and I could direct them to go after one or two of the big guys or 100 little guys, I'd say go after one or two of the big guys. But right now they don't do that. Real quick, right now they go after the little guys, and the argument is, but if you just had, instead of 100 agents, 1,000 agents, then they'll go after the big guys. It's bullshit.
So what is happening here is that you don't have enough people to actually look over everything. So when you don't have enough people to actually look over everything, you go after where you can get the most, not the most bang for the buck, but where you can get the most out of anything.
That's not true.
And when you're And when you're having to go after rich people, not only do you need more complicated agents to actually go over their taxes, you have to have lawyers and you have to have other people involved in that, and they're going to tie it up in courts. And because they tie it up in courts, it costs the agency more money to go after those people. So by going after quote unquote the little guy, and the most times that they do that is just a simple processing. It's basically like the system's like, hey, you said you had 8 kids. We show you have 2. You owe us money because of that. That's the most of the things that happen. Most of the things that are done for bad taxes is done on basically a process, automated process system.
How many IRS agents are there currently? Before
How many
Biden?
Currently?
Just a ballpark. I'm not asking you. I'm not having you to have specifics. You
You
had to guess.
Okay, so so we're clear, when you say agents, are you talking about every single person that works at the FBI, or you want the people going after?
Sure.
Because
okay,
it matters to.
Let me rephrase it, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they say this is kind of doubling the amount of agents, which in your definition would be everyone?
Yeah.
So it was 80,000. So we'll assume that there's currently a bank of 80,000. And for the sake of your argument, can we say 50% of them are kind of phone call type people and the other 50% are actual agents going after? Would you say that's
anywhere
a reasonable
50,
guess?
Yeah, we'll say 50%. Be conservative on it.
Yeah, I'm not holding you to the number. I'm just trying to get a ballpark idea. So, okay. All right. So that would mean that there's currently 40,000 people, lawyers, auditors, etc., going after people's taxes, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And right now, those 40,000 are leaving the big dogs go because there's just not enough of them.
They're not leaving all of them go, but they're not able to go after every single person.
Why?
So
Explain.
that's where the thing is here, because they don't have enough people.
Okay, but
so
why
they go
ever
after a combination. They go after a combination of the
Why?
automatic
That's the
processing, because automatic processing is cheaper and easier to do.
Okay, but the question is, what if it's so easy to do? Then you could do the automatic processing with very little people. Let's say that like these 40,000 agents would be able to get 5% of the people making over 500,000 a year, right? If they focused exclusively on those people. Now, according to the left, that would lead to more revenue for the IRS if they focused on those people making over half a million.
It would lead more revenue for the IRS, assuming it doesn't get tied up in court and end up bleeding it through court litigations. And that's why you need a higher budget.
No,
so
wait
a
minute.
More agents
real quick.
allow it to not stay stagnant in court.
You're jumping the gun, right? So more agents just mean you could go after more people, right?
No, it doesn't mean you just can go after more people. It means that the people that you are going after they can be looked at in a more robust manner, and you have more resources to actually dedicate to it.
That's not
true.
true.
The people that you're going after you're able to go through the court process a bit quicker, assuming it's not just like appeal after appeal after appeal. That's the only reason.
Well, of course. Why would it change? Why wouldn't it be appeal after appeal after appeal? Magically, we hire 40,000 new agents, and now the rich decide.
You didn't understand. You didn't understand me. I was saying that when you have more people, you can have more. You have more people. You have more people assigned to the same case, and that case can be processed quicker. Then it can go to the next guy. So if it takes 2 years, I'm not saying this is what it does, right? But if it takes 2 years to go after one complicated case because you only have we'll say 1,000 agents to spread out across all the complicatedness, then and you suddenly triple that number, so you now have 3,000, 6,000, whatever the number I fucking said. Then you take the time by a third, and so instead of taking 2 years, you have like 8 months.
You're proving my point, right? So then it means that you could go after more people, right? But like right now, let's say in order to cut the time, let's say right now, hypothetically, let's just say for each big dog over 500,000, it takes 100 agents focusing on that, right? And if you had 300 agents, it would cut their time down by a third, which means they would be able to go after 3 times as many of the big dogs, correct?
Within a same time period, not necessarily year over year. I'll give you that.
Okay, right. So then the question is, if it was really true that it would mean more money for the IRS to focus on these big people, they wouldn't go after the little people at all, right? Because they would say, well, we could cut our time by third. Please, let me finish. We could cut our time by third for just putting 3 times more agents on these big cases. And yes, that might mean we can only get 2% of the big guys. But then doubling the agents, all that would mean is now instead of getting 2%, you go after 4%. The argument I'm making quite simply is this. There is no reason why the IRS will change their tactics because they've doubled their agents. Now they'll say, oh boy, it's still just as hard to get after the big guys. We're going to keep going after the low-hanging fruit. Which is why they're announcing things. Yeah, of course they do.
No, they don't need the agents to go after the little guys as much because the little guys they're filling out their paperwork incorrectly. So those are mostly automatically processed.
Then why is that occurring
automatically
now?
Processed? Why is what occurring now?
How many agents right now are working on little guys?
I don't know. We can go with the 50% number.
How hard do you think it'll
40,
be? How hard do you think it'll be? Do you think it'll require more agents to look at Venmo transactions, $600 and above?
Didn't that get not done?
I don't know. I thought that it passed.
I don't think it
Maybe
passed.
I'm wrong.
I think I'm pretty sure they abandoned that because of all the kickback, which honestly they probably should have. I understand why they were thinking it was a good idea. Because what they did, they probably did some sort of study where they're like, hey, a lot of people that are avoiding taxes are sending under the minimum of $1,000 to people, and are using Venmo and like other apps to do it, to try to get around the automatic trigger notices from banks. But I'm pretty sure they said they're not going to do 600. And the 600 thing was, I think it was a exploratory thing. I don't think it was even actually ever agreed to.
I could be wrong, but I'm seeing from NBC News from February 6th, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle must report transactions over $600. Here is
right, but IRS reminds Americans earning over CNBC Cash App transaction to report their earnings. Yeah, that's all this is. This is basically saying that you have to report your income. This was CNBC News published. I'll drop it to you in chat here if I can figure it out how to do it without getting all. All right, we're gonna see the chat real quick.
You have to report income of over $600 in payments now through Venmo, according to the new IRS law. Right?
Well, you're supposed to do that anyways. You're supposed to report all.
The threshold for reporting used to be high real quick. The threshold for reporting used to be high through 2021. P2P platforms were required to report gross payments received for sellers who receive over $20,000 in gross payments and 200 settlement payments a year. Beginning in 2022, the threshold's been lowered to $600 payments without any regard to the number of transactions. If you cross the threshold, this platform will send you a form 1099-K and to the IRS the following year. So in other words, what this is, you say, well, you had to report that before, but what this is designed is for the IRS to now have access to be going after little people that were making transactions less or over $600. They'll now be able to have agents going after that, so their audits will be more effective for people that may have been hiding that information. Correct?
Sure. Why hide the information?
Right. That's exactly the point. Right. And that's the argument that left ultimately defaults to here, which is, well, you shouldn't be cheating on your taxes anyways. Those agents will be going after the little guy.
No, I'm not conceding that. I'm not conceding that point though, because because these are automatically done for the most part as of right now. So what this 1099 form is basically saying, hey, the 1090, what was it? The exact
1099-K
form. Okay, so the 1099-K form, right? The Venmo sends one on your behalf to the IRS, and you get one as well. You're supposed to reconcile that with the IRS, so you claim that on your taxes. If you don't reconcile that and you try to hide that money, then the IRS is simply going to automatically file your form and then say, do you owe back taxes? It happens to everybody. It happens on every 1099 contract as it is right now. My brother Matt got hammed up for it because he didn't save because his employer wasn't withholding enough from him for his taxes because he was on a 1099, and so he didn't put any money away because he's ignorant, and so the IRS is like, hey, you owe us $2,000. Right,
but those transactions are through places. You're talking about like maybe he gets YouTube money or he's got a business. It was
a leaf guard company, like gutter leaf guarding kind of thing.
Right. The problem is now that those are required. Venmo and places that are Cash App type things, right, are required to report that directly to the IRS. Like, you can't get around this. What this is for is to make sure that there are more successful audits of people that are making these sorts of transactions.
No, but you don't need the IRS agents to go over all these things because it's going to be automatically processed. You need the IRS agents to go on you need the agents that we're talking about, which is whatever the actual auditors are. So you need the auditors to actually go through a thing that has to actually be audited. When it's automatic system, when you have one system reporting to another and you're supposed to also report that money, it's going to go through a
What if you
system.
don't? That's the question. What if you don't?
The computer system kicks it out and they're like, okay, yeah, look, they not even an auditor would look at it and like, yeah, this person owes money. Here you go.
So I just want to be
And then
clear.
just
So
send a
then
letter.
according to you, you're saying that almost no IRS agents right now currently work on auditing people making like less than 100,000 a year, because basically it's all
I
automatic.
didn't say that.
It's, well, but
I
that's
didn't
what
say
you
that.
seem to be.
I said
okay, when it comes
no,
to it won't
because
require
there's-
any. Let me rephrase. It won't require any additional IRS agents with this change of $600 Venmo payments and things like that, because everything's
I don't-
automatic. It's all taken care of.
I don't think these that you're talking about with this payment through Venmo, Cash App, whatever. I don't think these will have to have additional agents, because this kind of situation is going to be a computer system spitting out the numbers, and it's just going to be a quick check. So it's not
I disagree.
Even an audit
I
that's gonna
disagree.
happen.
I disagree, and I think that the fundamental I'm sorry, I don't want to use the word fundamental. I'm trying to get that out of my vocabulary. I disagree, and I think that the overarching point is quite simple. That the idea that we have 40,000 agents right now, and it's just like, shucks, they can't really go after the big guys, so they just go after the little guys. But if we had double the agents, all of a sudden they'll be able to go after the big guys, and they won't be increasing go after the little guys. Is bullshit. And when your defense is that going after the little guys is automated, and so therefore it won't change, I don't believe that.
So when you say little guy, to me, that's anybody that's that's basically owns their own little small business that doesn't make $100,000 a year on that business. I don't like these $600 payments that the IRS is now requiring Venmo and Cash App to report, just like any other 1099 kind of company, is no different than you work like my brother working at a Leaf Guard, that he got an automatic thing, a generated letter saying, hey, you're supposed to pay taxes X amount of dollars. You didn't claim that. You owe us this much money. That's not going to require an auditor. What's going to require an auditor? That's fine. But what's going to require an auditor is a person that is a bit bigger than a little guy. So we'll say anybody who makes $150,000 a year, but is maybe like their own sign printing shop that's trying to pay people under the table. That's going to require an auditor because they're paying people under the table, not stuff like this.
I disagree, and I'll explain why. Do you ever hear of anyone like with an OnlyFans or a Twitch stream or someone that gets money that you could see when they're getting money, right? Like Twitch would be a good example. So if someone subscribes, people could see. Someone subscribed, that you could guesstimate based on how many subscriptions I have, how much money I made that year on that, right? Do you ever hear of those people not reporting their money?
I mean, I assume they are, but I don't actually follow streamers.
You hear this all the time.
Not over.
You hear this all the time with like OnlyFans and things like that, where people will say, we're outing you to the IRS because you didn't report this income. According to you, every single person that receives money from Twitch, OnlyFans, etc., they're all audited if they don't claim it because it's completely computerized. There is no human interaction.
No. I didn't say it's all going to be automated. I said that these kind of situations are automated. It depends on the person's other taxes. So if I assume that you make some money off of Twitch. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay. So you make money off of Twitch, right? You also make money from your day job. And I don't know what else you do. Say you work another job. Like say you got Twitch, YouTube, whatever, all this content creating stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You also work this other job and you have another one. All that combined might require an audit because you have 4 different streams of income. The person that only has a single stream of income where they know that this is the only place that this person is making money from, may or probably will not, especially if it's small amounts, especially if it's just a 1099 reconciling thing. People that are claiming they're getting tax audited from the IRS, what they're talking about is those automatic form letters that get sent out when you owe the government money. That's considered an audit, but that's not what we're talking about. This is a problem of language. But they're not having a person sit there and like, oh my God, they made $20 on Twitch on Friday, the 28th of November. Oh shit, they didn't claim that. Fucking get them. That's not what they're doing here.
Well, right, that would be automatic.
That would be automatic? Then why would that require an audit?
Well, that's why I'm saying you're wrong. If it would be automatic, then every single person that got any money from Twitch whatsoever, the government would audit them.
And when they receive a letter from the IRS saying you are being quote unquote audited, it is generally speaking an automatic form letter saying that you owe the government X amount of dollars because you didn't claim it on your taxes for X year.
But they don't get everyone. If it was automated, it would be simple.
Of course
They would get every single.
They would get everyone. They're never going to get everyone.
Why wouldn't if it's automated?
Because it's not all automated. Because not every single person is under these conditions that we're talking about.
You wouldn't have to be under the conditions. You're saying that would require. Let me finish. You're saying that my situation, if I have multiple sources of incomes, might require an audit because it's more complex. But the person who's purely receiving money from Twitch, that would all be automated, correct?
And it probably is.
Okay,
I have no reason to doubt
that would mean that anyone that's on some of these platforms, OnlyFans, Twitch, YouTube, etc., every single one of them would never be skipping out on any taxes because it's all automated. So even if they failed to record $20, the government would be like, a computer would spit out at the government's end. Oh, this
and that's what mostly happens.
But it doesn't because
that's
lot of
that's
people,
what mostly happens.
No, that's not true because what I'm telling you is there's an awful lot of people that do things like this that don't report it and get away with it. And if it was automated, none of them would be able to do that. And what I'm telling you is while it is true that there is some automation, there's also human interaction at the IRS that is required to do these things. And I'm telling you that, like, we'll see what happens. I don't want to take up all your time in this topic. You got 9 more minutes, or we'll give you 15 more minutes. But I'll just say this. We'll see which one of us is right. I predict that we won't see the big dogs paying much more taxes. I think that they lobby, that they'll continue to use loopholes, and they'll continue to be able, almost at the exact same clip they are now, to avoid paying taxes, and that more people will get audits that are in those lower income brackets. In fact, Republicans, even one Republican at least, actually put in an amendment saying that these increased agents shouldn't be allowed to go after people making $250,000 a year. And of course, the Democrats wanted nothing to do with it.
They shouldn't be allowed to go after people that make 250 or 250 is a lot of money.
Okay. Well, then the Democrats could have capped it lower than that, 100.
But
why not say that?
Okay. Because they don't agree with you. They don't agree with you ideologically to say that they can't ever audit a person that makes less than that. Ideologically, no. Ideologically, they don't agree with that. That would prevent them from doing it entirely. But you're trying to say
they already have enough agents for that. They already have enough agents for that. That's what you said.
No, I didn't say that they have enough agents to go after every single thing. I said it's mostly automated, and as you said, they're not actually capturing everybody. But it's mostly.
Yeah, well, we'll see who's right. I'm out there telling you, audience that's not really rich, don't be surprised when you and more of your friends get audited, and all this talk of, no, trust us, it's just necessary to go after the big dogs. But you take the discussion where you want. I don't want to dominate your time. So.
No, I think we've commented in past. We've said our piece. So I wasn't expecting to convince you. I just wanted to debate. So
no, it's fine. I didn't think it was. I thought it was a worthwhile discussion. I just think I don't trust that like the same agents that allow these people or that are incapable of getting these wealthy people today or allow them or whatever. All of a sudden, with 40,000 more agents, it's like now we got them. I don't believe it.
I don't think I don't think it has to be perfect to be beneficial. I'll just put it that way. If they're able to go after 30 more people, not 30 more people. Well, actually, if it's billionaires, that's going to require a lot of agents. But so if they go after 30 more billionaires, right, because of their expanded thing, I think that's worth it. So.
Not if they go after 300,000 more 50,000aires.
I don't think that's what's going to happen, though. I have no reason to believe that.
We'll see.
So.
Did you go ahead? You still got time. Whatever you want to talk about.
What I got? Another 10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started. I have us recording at 53 minutes, so we got. You go till 8:30. How's that sound? And then I'll go till 9:30.
That's whatever. Yeah, that's fine.
15 minutes.
No, I guess we could call it here and go on to the Jan 6 stuff. Jan 6 FBI, whatever. Unless you have a direct question for me before we go to that.
No, I will say this before we get to January 6th. It's kind of peripherally what you were talking about. The impetus is that you wanted to talk about policy as opposed to issues of corruption. I would contend that talking about corruption is a priori to policy, because no matter what our discussions would be on immigration or on tax codes and things like that, if your vote doesn't count because there's corruption, then you better hope that the people in charge just happen to agree with you, because otherwise it doesn't matter how articulate you are. If your ability to persuade people won't matter because the system is rigged.
I mean, that's fair. And just for a point of clarity, so that I think things get lost in translation through text all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not that I didn't want to talk about January 6th. Clearly, I'm talking about it, right? I also care about policy, and I want to see if people to my right and I can agree with on anything, right? That's what I want to know. I want to know how much bridges can we build here, and that's why I wanted to talk about this first before doing another thing, because we can debate corruption and politics and ideology all day. We can talk about our own biases or whatever. That's not, to me, really necessarily accomplishing much as we could maybe say, hey, we actually agree on a couple of issues. Let's work on those issues we agree on so that we can actually make, America better or whatever.
But we can't make America better if us agreeing is irrelevant.
Well, no, it's not irrelevant. It's only irrelevant if you believe that the entire system is so irredeemably corrupt that you want to see it all come down. And if that's the case, well, there's no point in discussing anything, because then at that point you should just take up arms, right? Like,
well, no, that's only true on extremely what's the word I'm looking for? Only extremely divisive topics. So, for example, let's take, me and you could argue, let's just say a hypothetical topic. Let's say you're like, I'm for Medicare for all, and I say, well, I'd like to see a more free market decision. Both of those are moral positions. I would take it on good faith that both of us want people to have health care. We want people to be healthy. We just have a disagreement on how to get there. But those are policies that you could see reasonable people of all different backgrounds disagreeing. It's like, okay, fair enough, right? Now, a policy of like, we should execute Hispanic people, that's fucking crazy. That's only going to be allowed to pass if there's insane corruption, right? But what I'm saying is those policies that it's like 40-60, 50-50, reasonable things, Medicare for all and things like that. Like, if there is corruption that is allowed to affect our elections so much that a select few of people could basically pick and choose the people that will be crafting policies, then it doesn't really matter, right? You better hope that whoever gets elected agrees with Medicare for all.
So but to me, if you believe that is how far corrupt the system is, then the only logical conclusion that you can do from that is to take up arms to fix the system. Because no matter who you vote for, no matter what you do, then if you believe it's that corrupt, then there's no other recourse other than violence to fix it.
That's not true. That's terrible. That's terrible. You don't say. If I can convince you of one thing tonight, I hope it's that's incorrect. I say this all the time. No matter how bleak things get, violence is almost never the answer. And for every one time that violence is the answer, there is 100,000, if not more, times that people claimed that it was the answer and that isn't. None of the situations, as bleak as it sounds right now, warrants any sort of political violence on the left, right, or anywhere in between. It does not. There are other things that we could do. For example, if we wake people, like for example, let's say that I hypothetically can convince you that the FBI is corrupt and they helped steal an election, right? Okay. Well, then the solution to that is to make sure that the FBI can't corrupt and steal another election. You don't need violence to do that.
But if they're not going to be able to, then they only answered it as revolution.
Well, but again, right? Who says they're not able to? Like, you're just defaulting.
Well,
basically.
Well, no, I'm saying I'm saying that if it. Okay. No, I was just going to say.
Please, I'll shut up.
Sorry, we're my bad. So what I'm saying is, like, if someone believes that it is hopelessly corrupt and convincing other people isn't going to fix that corruption, that they're not going to be able to dislodge these people through the ballot, then it's going to be the bullet, right? That's the way I look at it. So I don't think that that's where we are. And I don't, and that's why I want to debate policy, because if somebody thinks that they are that corrupt, then I don't think that we can actually build bridges, because they don't fundamentally have any trust in the system whatsoever. So it's a moot point.
The difference is this, right? You're saying if there is no hope, like theoretically we could see in a crystal ball and it's like nothing you could ever do will change this unless you use violence, then violence is necessary, right? But that's not the way things work. You're just assuming that if there's corruption enough to affect policy and culture in the way that I'm suggesting, then the only possible solution would be violence. I don't agree with that. I think that waking people up and convincing people to join your side and to take steps to end the corruption are things that can and will be effective. Now, at the level you could say, well, couldn't you say the same with policy? Well, not really, right? Because, for example, part of the corruption might be controlling the narrative and convincing it through propaganda, a plurality of people of something, right? That propaganda is easier to expose when you're exposing the corruption and propaganda itself than winning a policy position so much, because we already agreed, like, you would have to win that policy position like 95%. It would have to be a no shit type thing. Like, of course, we should be against X thing. And if the government didn't, that would wake people up.
But I mean, okay, so okay, that's funny. Okay, I think I think you understand why more so that I wanted to do a policy thing first rather than
I
like going back and forth. So yeah.
I wish that we had a system where our voices mattered more and we could spend all of our time talking about these policies. I really do. I think that policy, I find the conversations to be interesting. I don't claim to be a policy wonk or anything like that. I'm opinionated, but the thing that's more uplifting about policy is most of the time when you're talking to someone, even if you massively disagree, you can understand that your motivations are very similar. Like, we want people to be healthy. Sure. We don't want people to be, to suffer. That's the truth. Like, even, and my audience will hate me for this, you could be a moral person and be a socialist, right? Like, I disagree with that, but I believe that most people, that are looking at it through a policy lens, and they're looking at a socialist type policy, like free education, send the students back their tuition checks, refunding student loans, something like that. That doesn't make you a shitty person for believing that. I disagree that that's a good solution, but that's sort of uplifting. That's conversations you can have around the dinner table with friends, and you don't hate each other. Corruption's different, because if you get someone that truly is like, yeah, I think you're evil, and I think that the boot should be brought down in your throat, it's hard to overcome that. It's hard to be like, we can still be friends, right? That's tough. So I do think that there's a time and a place to talk about policy. I think that it occurs a lot, and I think that the issue that I focus on the most being corruption is, I think it's a priori to these policies being enacted, and I also think that there's not enough people that are talking about it in an in-depth way, as I hope to be able to convince you when we get to this topic coming.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Okay. So we're good on your do you have any closing statements?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right.
No, let me close at the end of the show. That's fine.
It's fair. No problem. All right. So the time is 8:22. We'll try to wrap up by 9:20, if that's fair, and then we'll do closing statements and everything. Then I'll get down and put up my Christmas tree. This is the plan here this evening. So, all right. So a precursor for what in here is I regularly retweet things or tweet out things. I tweeted something, I think I retweeted something about January 6th, and you and another person got into a discussion. And in that, the discussion of zip ties came up. I would guess that you're a person that thinks that January 6th was a big deal or an insurrection or something like that. Sure. And this person was... Go ahead.
Let's just say I ate crow on that. 100% I was wrong, so...
Right, but there's a few stylistic things that I think is important to talk about. Because you said, well, they brought zip ties, and this person said, no, they didn't. And you said, you're a liar and you're living in a bubble. And then he was able to provide documents from the court trial that showed that actually he was right. Which gets to why I wanted to have this conversation, because two reasons. One, I think the hubris of so many people that just buy the mainstream narrative on this, so much so that they don't say, well, I don't think so, I think X. Instead, it jumps right to, you're a liar, you're living in a bubble. And the truth is that you are grossly misinformed about what happened there. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I hope to convince you that maybe you should look more into these things before you take that step, because I think that you're being misled and not seeing both sides of the argument when you make statements like that. So that's why I wanted to have this discussion.
More than fair. And to talk about, like, I simply didn't see that court case because that's not one I was following. I did not follow that case. I saw the zip ties. The first thing that I saw, well, he's got zip ties. He's probably in there to kidnap people. And I didn't bother to look it up again. So it's not necessarily a thing where it's like a bubble necessarily, although I will eat crow and say it might be to a degree. But it's just, I was totally unaware of that, and that's why I ate crow on it. So, and I apologize to that guy for calling him a liar.
Did. And he was calling you a shithead. It wasn't like that dude was Mr. Respectable. He was like, F you, I hope, you're a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't like that guy was super, I get that. I'm not saying, but I am saying I truly believe you thought he was in a bubble and was lying, and you're wrong. You're wrong about that.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to start out and ask you, before we get into the specifics, let's lay some framework here. If the FBI is an agency as the most powerful, you would agree that they're basically the most powerful, if not one of the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the history of the world. You'd agree with that?
No, I don't think I would.
Could you give me an example of a law enforcement agency that had more power and more tools?
I would say that maybe that was true prior to the and I'm not going to remember the years this happened. It was in the 60s. It was after Hoover. After Hoover, all those reforms came down, and they actually had more people looking over their stuff. Before that,
well, what does that have to do with power? So there's oversight over the power, but when I say power, I mean things. Oh, okay.
They had some of their tools taken away. They were not able to spy on Americans. They had all these things done that actually curbed that power.
They're not?
Not in the same way. Like I wouldn't compare the FBI to like the Stasi, right? Like the Stasi is more powerful than the FBI right now. That's what I'm saying. Let's just say in the United States,
let's say they're more well funded than the Stasi. They're more competent than the Stasi, right? In that the Stasi kind of fell apart, the Soviet Union, right? Like.
Sure, I mean, but then the Nazis had the SS and their secret police as well. We're not under this giant police. We're not.
But that's not what I'm talking about. Let's just limit it to the United States. Is there a law enforcement mechanism in the United States more powerful or above the FBI?
Probably the NSA doesn't do law enforcement actions. The DEA is pretty fucking powerful too. Come
on, domestically the FBI.
That's fine.
Right,
I'll give you that.
Right.
One. It's not worth it.
And so, would it be a problem if that agency was politicized and engaged in a double standard?
Yes, it would be for any government agency to happen, even on the state level. There's a reason why I don't like sheriffs a lot of the times. Okay, but that's true of any government agency. If it becomes politicized, it needs to have reforms, and that's just what it is.
Okay. Good. So I just want to get that in the record. And then the last question I get asked before we jump in is, do you think the FBI is politicized?
No, I don't think it's politicized.
Okay.
Well, okay.
All right.
Well, hold on. Wait. So I might define politicizing differently than you. So why don't you tell me what politicizing means to you, and then I can say whether I agree with you or not.
That they have a side that they like more and are self-interested in preserving their own power and advocating for politicians and people that are in that side.
So I think that's two separate things. So every single agency is self-interested in order to maintain its power. DEA does it. Police departments do it on the local and state level. That like government agencies do it. The Army, the Air Force exists because they wanted to break away from the Army and have its own little thing. So I think that's two separate things. I think, yes, on that one, they are very much self-interested and they want to preserve whatever power it is that they have. That's true of all agencies. That's true of everybody. I do not believe that they are partisan with that. I don't believe they are like inherently like anti-Trump. Like they don't back Democrats more than Republicans. They don't back Republicans more than Democrats. In any of this.
Well, it's not just a Republican-Democrat thing. You would admit that, like, even if they like Mitch McConnell or they like Mitt Romney, but they actively tried to sabotage Trump, you wouldn't say, well, that's okay because they like Republicans.
I don't believe that they try to actively sabotage Trump.
I understand that, but I'm just saying you're not going to make that argument down the road, right? You're not going to say, well, even if they sabotage Trump, they
No.
Gotcha.
No. That's not where I just don't think they're politicized because I don't think that that's where they're at. But I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page.
Get to that. We'll get to that. It's clearly where they're at. I mean, have they ever spied on a president of the United States previous to Trump?
To be determined.
Right, but there's no public knowledge of that, correct?
Not that I am aware of. There might be some implications with JFK, but yeah.
Do you think that if the FBI is investigating presidential candidates or presidents, that they should have to be very much by the book and understand that this is going to be one of the most politicized investigations?
Yes, and anybody that was not by the book, and unless it was like, okay, so there's a difference between malice and negligence, and negligence to the point of being like, I don't know what he would say, like objective incompetence, where they can't do their job at all, right? Would you agree with that? Like, there's incompetence.
I agree.
There's gross incompetence. There's gross negligence, and then there's actually being like partisans and going after people and that sort of thing.
It's one of my least favorite arguments because the strike, even the IG report itself is so striking about the misbehaviors of the FBI's investigations of Hillary and Trump. To claim that it's incompetence is actually worse and more of an argument to disband the FBI, because to be that incompetent beyond the scale of second graders would mean that we shouldn't trust this agency for anything.
What I would say is that there is not evidence that they are incompetent to the level that the entire agency needs to be taken down. There might be some incompetence on some people's parts where they should no longer be in the FBI.
Like leadership.
Leadership, or even somebody's lower down that was like,
okay,
the Susan, is it Susan, not Susan Page, but the Page and the whatever,
Lisa Page, Peter Strzok.
I'm bad with names. Okay,
that's fine. I know who you're talking about. Lisa Page.
Yeah. So Lisa Page and whatever the other guy's name
Peter
was.
Strzok.
Yeah. So those people, they're no longer at the FBI, correct? Both of them have been.
That is correct.
Okay. So that's what I would say. I would say, like, when you show that you as an individual are that bad at your job that you don't understand optics and all the other stuff, and you do something that's really bad, you should be fired.
What if their leadership knew that? What if their leadership knew that was occurring and didn't fire him until the public became aware of it?
I would say that's bad too.
Okay, so that'd be Comey, that'd be Wray, that'd be Rosenstein, that'd be McCabe.
Sorry, Baker, bug flying on me.
Right, that'd be all these people
I'll just
at the top.
For it.
Okay, right. Let's just cut to brass tacks. Do you think, for example, I didn't plan on going here, but do you think that changing evidence to say the opposite of the truth, do you think that's incompetence or malice?
Changing things that didn't. I'm sorry, can you say it again? I got distracted by chat.
If you change evidence to say the opposite of the truth, do you think that you could say, well, that's incompetence? If you're a top FBI lawyer.
Probably malice, but I would have to know exactly what you're talking about. I have an idea of what you're talking about, but I wasn't.
Kevin Klein
wasn't what I thought we were going to be talking about.
Right. That's fine. But Kevin Kleinsmith was a lawyer at the FBI who the FBI asked the CIA if Carter Page, who they had a FISA warrant against to spy on, if he had ever helped the CIA in investigations against Russians. The CIA responded, yes, he did. And Kevin Kleinsmith, the top lawyer at the FBI, said to no. That's malice, correct?
More than likely, yeah.
Do you think that's a big deal?
Sure. Maybe that person should be fired.
It should be fired. Is that it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, given the position, maybe there should be a criminal investigation to it, but I'm pretty sure there was. So.
There was. What do you think? If it's proven that he did that, what should the punishment be for that?
I don't know. Whatever the current law of the book says. I wouldn't say like tar and feather the guy, but whatever.
How about? Do you think he should lose his license to practice law?
Oh, that's a good one. That's not a legal thing. That's that's the American Bar Association.
Right.
So that would be their determination.
But you think that they could remove it if he engaged in?
I mean, if they're if the American Bar Association determined that he engaged in unethical behavior, then he should. Then they have the thing to.
Well, they didn't.
Talk about
they let him. He's still allowed to practice law, and he got a slap on the wrist.
That's the American Bars Association's look at it, and the slap on the wrist wrist could be any number of different things.
Right, but isn't that weird? Malice at the top level to spy on a president of the United States, and it's like, you get a little bit of probation and you're allowed to practice law. Seems strange. Let's just.
No, I don't think
I'll just go. But just so we get to January 6th, I'll just say, do you think the FBI? Well, real quick before we get there, because you brought up the only reason I bring this up, you brought up the FBI being able to spy on citizens. They can through the FISA court. The FISA court's acceptance rate is something like 99.7%.
No, I said. Okay, to be clear, I'm saying it's not this overarching like Stasi like system. There's still checks and balances. They don't just get to, and we can talk about whether or not FISA is a rubber stamp court or not. There's reasons that might be the case. Okay, but they're not just going and doing it. They're still going through a legal process that is supposed to help protect people.
It's supposed to. Okay, right. It's supposed to, but it's basically a rubber stamp. Nonetheless, do you think that the FBI...
Can I push back on that just for a second on the rubber stamp thing? So the kind of cases that are taken to the FISA court are done in such a methodical way that they only go to the FISA court with information that they know the FISA court will approve of.
That's not true. It has nothing to do with methodical nature. It could be because they're withholding information from the FISA court. For example, the Inspector General Horowitz investigated not just the FISA court application of Carter Page, but also looked at 15 other cases. And in all 15 of those other cases that he looked at that weren't connected to Trump or Hillary Clinton, guess what he found? In every single one of all 15 that he looked at, the FBI had errors and omissions and behaved improperly. Every single time. 15 out of 50.
There's a difference between behaving improperly, being incompetent, being malice, and being negligent. What information was left off? Like, these things matter, because if it's not very material to the situation, then it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter in the context that you're saying. You're saying there are checks and balances on them. But only when we saw a gross political case that was the highest profile case that the FBI was going to be involved in, did we then see the checks and balances oh shit, they're wrong every time.
15 cases aren't every time. That's the thing.
15 out of 15 is every time that they looked at.
15 out of 15 that was looked at might have been another political thing, for all we know. It could have been political from the other side.
I'll just ask you this real quick. Do you think that the FBI should have to attempt to verify information before getting its FISA warrant to spy on a U.S. citizen?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Do you think that the threshold should be even higher if it's to spy on a presidential candidate's team or a president?
Well, the political nature of this is where the issue is, because the political nature of it is inherently, icky, right? But we can't just let people declare their candidacy so they can avoid investigations.
That's true.
That would be
nonetheless
that would be where I would say maybe not extra scrutiny and extra careful, but maybe another check, like from the Attorney General.
You're not dumb. You understand.
Well, the Attorney General was the one that has to approve the political ones, right?
But nonetheless,
under Barr under Barr, under Holder.
Eric Holder? Yeah, right. Eric Holder approved to spy on Trump?
Barr.
Shocker. Shocker.
Holder, Barr, not Susan Page.
The attorney, Bill Barr did not have to sign. The head of the FBI had to sign off on the warrant. So it was James Comey, and then once he was...
Well, I'm saying these are people these are all political appointees. Okay, and we understand that they're political appointees, and that's the system that we have. And these are the kind of people that approve this stuff. That's the extra check. So if you wanted to not be
that extra check exists anyways. There's already top brass that has to sign off on these FISA warrants. And what I'm saying is, you understand that the way these situations play out in real life, because of the potential for bad optics, that the threshold for spying, for example, on a president of the United States should be much higher than spying on an average person. The threshold should already be very high, right? We're talking about violating someone's Fourth and First Amendments. That should be very high to treat them as a foreign spy. But it's even higher when you're talking about doing so to a presidential candidate or a president. I'll just say this. Would it shock you to learn that the FBI did not even attempt to verify the FISA warrant or the Steele dossier until after they got their first?
No, because they have to get the FISA warrant to actually go look into the allegations of the.
So then you take back your statement. You take back your statement that they should have to verify information before they use it to get a FISA warrant. You take that back then.
Yeah, I would take that back, and it's not just because it's political. It's because there's certain things that you have to undergo the information. You have all this information, right? And sometimes that's going to require you to actually investigate to see if that information is true, and that's where the FISA warrant comes in.
Do you think that that's how law enforcement works, not just with the FBI, but also local law enforcement? That you have to investigate to see if something's true?
Yes, actually, that's how law enforcement works.
Well, congratulations to cheering for one of the most authoritarian systems imaginable. Any accusation?
No, it's not. It's not any
accusation.
It's not any accusation. It's not any accusation.
Yes, it is. That's what.
It depends on the situation. And like I said, there's some information that you might get that will require you to investigate the person that has the claim on it before you actually prove that it's true or not.
Okay, so let's do a hypothetical.
Where the checks and balances come in.
Trump wins in 2024, and then he pays a law firm to go out and find a Chinese spy that says Joe Biden likes to sniff the hair of underage girls in China and boys.
That should be investigated. We already had this.
It should be investigated. That should be investigated. That's what you're saying.
We already had this. I don't remember, but I don't remember.
Okay, I don't remember, but I just want to get that in record. So you're acknowledging that any accusation of that sort of nature, even if you paid for it, that should result in a FISA warrant to spy on a presidential campaign.
It depends. Okay, say what your example is again, because I cut you off before I heard the full thing. Because I'm sure that there's something here.
Okay, Joe Biden sniffs the hair of little girls in China, and he's also colluding with China to try to win elections and get business deals.
The colluding in elections and business deals probably would have to be looked at. The other stuff seems specious. But that's how these things work, right? So that's analogous to the dossier, right? The dossier had the P tapes and other shit in it.
That's right.
And then they had other things of hey, X, Y, and Z person was here at this time, and you're oh shit, well we were there at that time and we saw that person talk or whatever, so we have to investigate this.
That's not how it works. And you and every other Democrat will freak out if this ever happens in the inverse. If ever sycophantic people in the FBI
don't put me in those. Don't put me in that.
Yes, I am.
Be more in good faith, because I'm telling you what my position is.
No, it won't. So you're telling me that if we have FBI agents that say that we need an insurance policy to stop Joe Biden, right? And those agents that have exhibited malice and bias so much to the point where the Inspector General admitted that
you're combining different things.
You're
combining different things. Yes, you are.
Saying I'm taking an analogous situation.
I am saying that we have to separate the two, okay? The analogous situation, you're combining all these things together to make it one cohesive thing. If we're talking just about the Steele dossier, that Steele dossier should have been investigated because of the allegations therein, right? A similar thing should happen with Biden. If should there be they're trying to steal the election or whatever, right? Those should be investigated because the allegations are super fucking serious, right? But then the other angle of it, of saying, hey, we have to have these things about the insurance policy or what have you, that is separate from the Steele dossier itself, because the Steele dossier came through other methods.
Because I'm saying that in this situation that we saw, if it was as close as we could apply it to, you wouldn't be saying, hey, it's no problem that the FBI agents doing this said they wanted an insurance policy, and it's no problem that these were just rumors that were paid for by Trump, and it's no problem that they couldn't verify the information and used it to get 4 FISA warrants. If the accusation is serious, then we need to spy. And it's no problem that it got leaked to the press all the time.
Investigated. Okay. When it's something of serious like that, it needs to be investigated.
All right,
how that investigation goes, we can disagree on whether or not it was a proper investigation. But when an allegation is as serious as that, when it goes to the heart of American power, then you have to investigate it. That's how you prove that they're wrong.
I'll say this. I'll say that either you're bad faith and that you're full of shit, and that if this happened in the inverse, you would say this is corruption, this is abuse. You'd be listening to CNN and the New York Times saying this is a Stasi
don't
president.
Watch CNN.
Please, just let me finish. You would be listening to them and people parroting that, and the Democrats saying this is abuse, this is corruption, we need to impeach these people, we need to investigate them. Or let's say that's not the case. Your system and idea of what our FBI should be and what investigation should be are so fucked up that it would literally prioritize every single candidate ever paying anyone to make an accusation about their opponent, because the FBI would constantly have to spy on them for a year because the accusation.
No one said anything about spying. I said investigate.
They did.
Okay.
That is spying.
No,
that is spying. Getting a FISA warrant is spying.
I know, but we have to be clear here. So when you said investigate, I wasn't talking about the FISA warrant going through and spying on people. I said investigate it. Find out if some of the information is true. Look into the matters that are there and apply for your things that you need to apply for in order to do that. That's the checks and balances there.
Right, and the FBI said, right, for example, we can see that the FBI failed those checks and balances and systems over and over. One of the things they have to do is verify. Not a big deal, right?
No, I'm saying I don't agree with you, but
did you read the IG report?
I did.
So they failed to do the Woods procedures over 200 times.
Okay.
Right, they're required to do. They failed to accurately report to the FISA court what the primary subsource said.
Okay.
That they're required to do.
Okay.
They changed evidence to say the material opposite of what they said. They're required not to do that, right? Nonetheless, let's get to January 6th. I'm glad we could set the framework here. So January 6th, you think it was an insurrection?
I think there was elements there that were trying to foment an insurrection. Whether or not every single person that was there was part of that or not is debatable. Not every person there was there to be an insurrection. A lot of them were there as a protest that got riled up to be a mob.
Okay, how would you define insurrection? Like trying to overthrow the levers of power in some way?
Yeah, it would be stopping the transfer of peaceful transfer of power between a duly elected American official through violent means.
Okay,
that's a simple definition.
Does it have to be violence, or could it be intimidation as well?
I think intimidation could be part of it. So yeah, we'll say both.
Okay,
we can say both.
In other words, you never actually have to punch the senator in the face. You could just make them fearful that you may do something like that to stop what they're doing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a terroristic threat could
right.
would
It's not actual violence, but it'd be
example.
intimidation. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the last thing, the precursor question I have for this is: would you also say that stopping the transfer of power, you could deem something an insurrection if, say, they wanted to execute a politician, kill a politician? Like, for example, if they wanted to kill Mike Pence, that even if they didn't stop the transfer of power, they just said, we hate you because you did this. Would you also consider that an insurrection?
Terroristic threats, I think, rise to that level. Even if we're just saying they're blowing off steam, I don't think you should blow off steam in that way. I think that's very bad. You would
say that you would consider that an attempted insurrection if they were legitimately trying to physically harm a leader.
Yeah, I would say that physically trying to harm a leader during the transfer of power or topple a government or whatever. Yes.
Okay. Would you say that the FBI and law enforcement should not act in double standards in this country?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, would you say that they should follow the law to the best of their ability and not have a double standard where they treat one political side? You already said you don't think they're partisan, correct?
Yeah, I don't think they're partisan. They're not treating one political side differently than the other.
So you would expect to see that if there are incidents on the left where they engaged in violence or intimidation in order to change the peaceful transition of power, you would assume that the FBI would treat those similarly, correct?
I would say that the FBI handles federal cases. So if it's a federal instance, for example, the what was it? The 2017 Antifa thing. They arrested like 300 people or so and charged them and put them into prison similarly. Yeah.
When was this?
2017. Though the Antifa Stop Trump or whatever it was fucking rally in DC.
I don't know. Let's take some. So do you think that the threshold exacerbated when they broke into the Capitol January 6th?
Do I think that
that led to an increased threshold of an increased response?
Sure.
That it was potentially
but I don't know where you're going with this, but yes.
Well, of course you don't. So what if I was to tell you that Democrats broke into the Capitol as well in order to stop a peaceful transition of power? If that situation occurred, even if no violence, I'm asking you, even if no violence occurred, but if they
I need to know when this was.
I will tell you in 1 second. I'm just saying if there was a situation where Democrats broke past police in order to intimidate.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
What is it?
You're talking about. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Kavanaugh hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Was that an insurrection?
No.
Why?
No, because it was not there to overturn a government. It was there to disrupt a hearing.
No.
But
it was there to stop a Supreme Court justice from being confirmed. Yes, it was.
No, it was not. No.
So you're telling me with a straight face right now that the people that were breaking into the Capitol were not attempting to stop the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh?
They were protesting, and they were trying to disrupt that, but they were not trying. It's not anything for lawful transfer of power. It wasn't designed to topple the government. It wasn't.
What do you mean? What do you mean lawful transfer of power? He was a Supreme Court justice. They were trying to prevent him from becoming
the lawful
Supreme Court
transfer
justice.
of power in this instance is talking about transferring power politically from one person to another person.
So it's not an insurrection.
Just a disruption of noise and other things like of that nature to stop a hearing is not the same thing as going into the Capitol.
They used intimidation. They broke past police in an unlawful way, and they sought to stop a lawful government process to one of the three separate branches of government. Sure, they're analogous. Under what you said under what you said, your definition of insurrection would be they are. Yes, they are. They used intimidation to try to stop the peaceful transition of power. They were transitioning from one Supreme Court. Yes, it is. Is transition of power only through presidency?
Transition of power is political. It's political.
Right. And the nomination of a Supreme Court justice. How many branches of government do we have?
3.
Are those all political?
No. They're not.
So you don't think court appointees are part of the political process?
They're not political in the sense that you're voting for a fucking Supreme Court justice.
You're voting to confirm them, just like you're voting to confirm
the people
electors.
Aren't voting. The general people aren't voting for the Supreme Court justice. It's a convoluted process designed to check.
But that's a distinction that doesn't matter. Why does that matter?
No, it does.
Why would that distinction? So your argument is we can't consider something a political process if individuals aren't voting. This makes no sense, right? Like there's no reason that distinction would apply whether or not there's an insurrection. That makes no sense.
The Supreme Court is supposed to be a non-political. Supposed to be.
What does that have anything to do with it? What does that have anything to do with anything? Okay, so for example, if people said we don't like the Dobbs decision, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, so therefore we will kill Supreme Court justices until they rule in the way we want. Is that an insurrection?
That person would be making a terroristic threat, but that would not be an insurrection because it's not targeting the entire government as it was for this.
How many branches of government are there?
Those people.
How many branches of government are there?
No, I'm not going down this rabbit hole.
There's 3 branches of government. Can you explain to me? I'll leave you post. We'll wait if you want. You said that January 6th was threatening the entire government. Can you show me that they were threatening Supreme Court justices? Go ahead.
They were threatening government, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature.
So if you only threaten the executive, no insurrection.
No,
if you only threaten the legislative, no insurrection.
It's targeting the whole government because what they wanted to do, what these people, you think you got me, but you don't.
I do. I do have you.
No, you don't, because this is dumb. It's not analogous. Mm-hmm. Now I will say that the people that if the person that threatened to kill Kavanaugh should be charged with terrorism, and that person should be in prison. Probably, maybe not necessarily their entire life. I believe in redemption. But they should be in prison for that.
Okay. May 30th, 2020, a bunch of violent lefties lit fires, they didn't bring zip ties, they brought Molotov cocktails. They burned down a guard station. They attacked the White House in an attempt to physically remove Donald Trump. Insurrection?
Yes.
Did the FBI have an analogous response?
I wouldn't be able to answer that because I just assumed that they did.
Take a guess.
I would say that he probably had somewhat of a response since, CPB and a bunch of other military people were. Okay.
Did they have an analogous response?
I assume that they did. But you can tell me I'm wrong. Because I didn't look into it. Because I assumed that the government's going to do the correct thing.
I will just say this, right? I'll tell you briefly why they didn't. But if they didn't, would you say that's a problem?
Potentially, but I have to know what the differences are.
I don't. I'll tell you the difference. I'll tell you the differences, but I just want to know if you're admitting that was an insurrection. You've admitted May 30th, 2020 was an insurrection. So sure. I just want if the FBI did not treat that in a similar manner of the insurrection of January 6th, you would say that's a big problem.
I would need to know what those differences were.
I will tell you what the differences are, but I'm saying hypothetically.
Those differences matter. So
let's say one of the differences was that they didn't have one of the largest task force in the history of the agency. In fact, the largest task force in the history of the agency.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
I just want to say, I'm not going to.
Why do you assume that Why do you assume that they don't?
Because they don't. Because it's obvious, because they've admitted it. The amount of resources that the FBI has put into January 6th is incredible. And it's still ongoing. It's not just that the FBI is putting resources into it. It's the amount of convictions they brought. It's the amount of tenacity they went on. It's the charges that they filed. It's the treatment of the prisoners. It's the connection to committees. It is the release to information to the media and everything. It's not even close. And I'm not going to belabor this point to you because everyone watching, even left-wingers, knows, yeah, dude, it's absurd to even pretend that the FBI's response to May 30th, 2020 was similar to January 6th. It's not even close. All of us know it, and you're making yourself look bad by pretending that you don't know that.
That's fine.
Okay, so we can see then that you think it would be a big deal. I suggest looking it up and what their response was to May 30th, 2020. By the way, instead of bringing...
I don't make assume, but that's fine.
Right, instead of
I
bringing
just don't,
zip
this wasn't
ties-
what we were supposed to talk about, so...
Sure it is. We're talking about January 6th.
No,
Now let's get
I specifically did direct research about January 6th direct things, not analogous things. So I can't answer these questions because...
Well, part of it was January 6th and the FBI corruption was what I said the topic would be, right?
Sure, and I looked up January 6th in regards to that.
Don't you think the FBI looking at analogous situations and enacting differently would be heavily suggesting that there's potential corruption?
It would depend. It would depend on why those differences exist.
All right, so then saying that...
And how many people were arrested the day of. Like, that's another thing. If they go arrested most of the people the day of, then it doesn't fucking matter.
Listen, saying that this is out of bounds...
Why would the FBI need a giant fucking tax force to go round up people if they made most of between every single, not military, every single law enforcement agency or quasi law enforcement agency at the, was it January 30th? Is that what it was? Is that the date?
Yeah, they didn't.
Whatever. This thing.
They didn't.
They didn't make all those arrests.
They didn't lock everyone up that day. No, they didn't. And what I'm saying,
they're not going to lock everybody. They haven't locked everyone up from Jan 6. So that's a non sequitur. That doesn't matter.
Over 3,000 people, right? But nonetheless, the point is this: you're now transitioning away from you're like, well, this is out of bounds. This wasn't what I prepared for. By the way, just real quick, while we're talking about what we prepared for, did you tell me what the topic was I would be debating that you talked about?
No, I did not. That's why
so then it comes off a little hollow. No, saying this wasn't what I prepared for.
No. I'm saying that like I cannot answer these questions because I don't know everything piece of information that goes there. So I have to take your word for it right now so we can move on rather than get hung up on weeds. That's all I'm saying.
Let's move on. Okay, to January 6th proper. So forgetting the double standard of the FBI's treatment. Would you say that the FBI had foreknowledge that this insurrection, as you call it, was going to occur?
So based on everything that I was able to look up and the time frames that I was able to look up, no. Not at least in the way that a lot of people are seeming to say that they did online and even some pundits. So what it appears to me from everything that I've been able to find is that there has been some people that reached out to the FBI. One of the people was a lower level member of the Oath Keepers that called the FBI and like, hey, Rhodes is saying some weird shit, man. Like, you should look into this. And the FBI's like, that's not enough to go on, so we can't. And then a lot of the other people turned state evidence after the fact. And that's when they started to go interview more of these people.
So
and there was maybe some give me's here and there between like the Proud Boys and like some other Oath Keeper people, but not anything that said, hey, we're showing up on January 6th to do the things that we did.
Before I get to that point specifically, have they since found information that they were saying we're showing up to have an insurrection January 6th?
I think they have since found that information, but that is after the fact. So you can't say that they knew ahead of time that it was happening.
So
and the stuff that they had.
Good.
Sorry, go ahead. I have the burp, so go ahead.
Just to let the audience know that I believe the FBI said they had over 18 informants embedded at the time talking to them before January 6th from the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. He says a low-level guy from the Oath Keepers. It was their vice president is who it was.
No. It was the vice president. Just to be clear, it's a vice president. He talked about a specific thing about the Portland guy that they were going to go into Portland and do something. That was what I've been able to find out through reading different reports. And then there was another guy that was there, and I can tell you that guy's name because I have that written down. So hold on. So Mick Witter is the vice president person. And then a nascent plot to ambush someone affiliated with the leftist movement known as Antifa in the Pacific Northwest. And then another person by the name of Mr. Rashid, Abdullah Rashid, called the FBI and told them that he was worried about Rhodes' rhetoric during one of their meetings.
So
I can send you the link to that.
Right. What we see is it wasn't just low level people. It was actually the vice president, and those people. The FBI has used their testimony. Let me finish. Their FBI has used these informants' testimony at trials of people in the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys to say that they were actively planning a insurrection. They also said that they had been in constant communication with many of these informants for months leading up into. So your claim is that they were in communications with these high-level people at the Oath Keepers, but the Oath Keepers, for example, this vice president of the Oath Keeper, either A, was unaware as the vice president that they were plotting an insurrection?
It's not that they were unaware. It's that that's not the information that they shared with the FBI. So according to this article that I read, as part of the cooperation with the government, Mr. Whitter told the FBI about a nascent plot by Oath Keepers to ambush someone affiliated with the leftist movement known as Antifa in the Pacific Northwest. According to one person familiar with the matter, the FBI had sought to use more aggressive investigation techniques to pursue the case, but lacked the evidence to move forward, the person said. So they were told about this, looked into it, didn't want to violate people's Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment rights, and then pulled back because they didn't have enough information to actually go through and do a proper, better investigation. Has
the vice president for the Oath Keepers been arrested and charged with committing an insurrection?
Yes, after the fact. So this is why the timeline matters, right? So if you have just talk, right, we can all blow off steam. It might violate Twitch toss to say, like, I want to do X, Y, or Z, right? But according to the government, I'm allowed to do that. But when you try to actually do it, when you go through and put into action those words, then it becomes an issue of legality.
So my question is, the vice president of the Oath Keepers, you're saying he has been arrested for the crimes of January 6th?
No, I don't think so.
Well, why?
I think he's because he's turned state evidence.
But so what? Other people have turned state evidence and still get charged with lesser crimes.
A lot of people, depends on the plea deals they make.
So I just want to be clear. This is what you're suggesting.
I just want to give turned state evidence.
Right. I just want to give the narrative that you're giving here to excuse this. Here's the narrative. That 8 people were embedded with the Proud Boys. I think there were 6 or so that were with the Oath Keepers. Let's take the Oath Keepers specifically. The vice president of the Oath Keepers, the FBI says for months was in communications with them. For months before January 6th was in constant communication with them. He was telling them as an informant that there was potential violence that was going to occur in places like Portland. But he was aware that there was an insurrection about to occur, but strategically did not tell the FBI about the insurrection, instead telling them about other lesser violence that was going to go in Portland.
I'm not saying that he didn't tell them. I'm saying that just telling them that this information is happening isn't necessarily going to be enough for them to actually go through and investigate it if we care about people's civil rights.
So do you believe now that the FBI was aware through informants that there was an insurrection being planned on January 6th?
The amount of evidence that they had did not give them enough.
That's not the question I asked. That's not the question I asked.
It's important to this point because the timeline
I'm asking a very specific question. You can elaborate after you give a yes or no. Right? My question is, do you think the FBI was aware via informants that there was plotting of an insurrection on January 6th?
They were aware of possible violence, but they could not determine whether or not that is blowing off steam or if that is actual plans. They were
the plans that they were aware of. Do you think had those plans been enacted, it would have been tantamount to an insurrection?
Probably.
Okay, there we go.
Now, it depends on what they know. Like I don't know what exactly they know.
That's why I'm asking you. It doesn't make sense because what you seemed to suggest beforehand was, like, I'm going through what your possible excuses are. It seemed like the first excuse was, well, the vice president of the Oath Keepers didn't know the Oath Keepers were plotting an insurrection. That seemed let me finish. Which you specifically said that's not what I'm saying, right? Right? So I am saying being unfair to you. Right. You're saying that's not. So I was like, okay, that would be nonsensical. So I'm glad you're not saying that. And then it seemed to me what you were suggesting was, but this vice president of the Oath Keepers, what he did was he didn't tell them about all the language about January 6th and all the planning of January 6th. Instead, he told them about Portland.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the information that I have that I'm able to reference is that specific plot. So I don't know exactly what the FBI was told and how much information that they actually had. I can say that based on Mr. Abdullah Rashid's information from what he told press is that he told and called the FBI and said that he was worried about the rhetoric that was being done and some of the things that they were talking about doing. And the FBI is like, that is not enough information to actually go through and investigate. we're sorry. And then afterwards, when the actual insurrection happened, or the actual plot, or whatever you want to fucking call it, happened with Oath Keepers on the ground helping lead charges or what have you, when that actually happened, then they went back to him like, okay, we need all that information that we couldn't investigate now because now it's an actual crime that we can investigate.
Okay, so now you're saying that, okay, it's most likely that, yeah, the FBI heard that there was a possible insurrection being planned. They just couldn't act upon it.
They could not act upon it due to people's civil rights. Correct.
You're full of shit. You're full of shit, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
Because
fine. I mean,
the idea that the FBI first off saw these groups as such a threat that they had informants that they were actively talking to. Then those informants are telling them, by the way, we're seeking to overthrow the government, possibly. And the FBI says, our hands are tied. There's nothing we could do. That's bullshit.
I mean, if you care about civil rights, it's not, though.
Well, they don't, as is evidenced by
Okay.
Like, so it's not even like, one, they don't, as we could already talk about with Carter Page, we could talk about with Papadopoulos, we could talk about with the Whitmer kidnapping, we could talk about with the FBI constantly setting up Muslim Americans after 2003. We could talk about all that. They didn't give a shit about their civil rights. They didn't give a shit about civil rights. But nonetheless, let's take that side of the argument out of it. Let's say, fair enough. You're telling me right now that our civil rights means that if the FBI has evidence, for example, if they have evidence,
depends on the evidence.
It's nonsensical.
Because they can do it. They can do it if they have, if somebody turns around, so this is why it matters, right? So if somebody says, hey, here is the actual plot, right? Printed off with fucking whatever, like command control schemes, the places that they're going to invade, the places they're going to set up security, where the weapon stashes are, etc. And they turn that over to the FBI. That's going to be enough information for 100% sure for them to actually go through and start to investigate it. If they're just like get a report and the person saying, hey, they're kind of being like violent and they're kind of saying they want to do stuff, you should look into this. That's not going to be enough. Because if that was enough, every single rapper would be fucking investigated for murder.
Well, many
by police
officers. That's not what's going on. It wasn't just a rapper saying, "Oh, I sang a song about shooting something." We're talking about, for example, if the FBI had embedded with a rapper because they thought that there was a serious chance that rapper would commit. They have informants around. They had 8 informants around the rapper.
The informants are people that are coming to the FBI and saying, yo, I have this information.
This is a joke. Let me ask you, this is a joke. I'm glad that we're having this. Let's go further from this. Would it be within the purview of the FBI to communicate with Capital City Police, Mario Bowser, Nancy Pelosi?
According to the information that I was able to find, they did warn that, and people dropped the ball.
That's not true. I read the article that you posted over and over. And now if you go down about 2/3 into that article, what it suggests is that one, that the FBI agent in charge couldn't explain why a week prior to this article, he had publicly acknowledged we had no forewarning of January 6th. Then a week later, he says, well, there was some. And you're using that him saying, well,
February 23rd, according to Reuters, FBI warning of Capitol violence did not reach top security officials. Right. So this is one of those other things. This is a different article. The other one was from PBS. I think it was from PBS NewsHour.
FBI warning of Capitol. I'm looking for this site. It's going to say the same thing. Were you linking it?
Yeah.
Where'd you put it, though?
I put it in our private chat, just where we're at.
Okay. Sorry, I had to... So we'll look at it. What this is going to say is that they heard that there was chatter from one person on a website that said that there was potential danger. Isn't that what it's going to say? It's not going to say the vice president of the Oath Keepers said that their organization was plotting an insurrection. That's not what this is going to say.
No, it's not. No, it's not the Oath Keeper thing. No.
Right. So the idea that then this article proves, what we're talking about 2 things differently. What this article is going to talk about is that there was a website that they were on and they heard one person kind of being like, I would like to have some sort of violence.
I wouldn't say it was just one person, but then there's also the instance of potentially wanting to keep the confidentiality of sources as well. So we don't know what's in this, what necessarily goes into the
right, but none report. Of the right. And so the reports that were cited, right, that came from newspaper outlets talk specifically about, and again, we can see that the top people at the FBI that were in charge of this were saying we had no forewarning. And then when they finally did say there were warning, they're talking about people posting things on message boards. That's different than having the vice president and 8 other people embedded in what you now call a terrorist organization that you now claim were describing that there was going to be an insurrection.
Okay, can we clean up the language here? Because when you say embedded, what I think of is that they have actual agents in an organization in order to disrupt it or whatever, right? So they have an actual person that works for the FBI that's actually an FBI agent in the organization.
If that's what you choose to believe is the word embedded, fine. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an informant that talked to them weekly.
An informant is going to have different levels of information than a person that's on the ground being able to report directly to the FBI, and that person can convey the information that they're conveying, and that still may not be enough for the FBI to actually go through and start arresting people.
It's nonsense, right? Like the idea that there's the way you're making it seems like they just had, hey, you know my local Lions Club? They do bingos and collect glasses for people. Do you think that they have FBI informants at the Lions Club that are constantly communicating with the FBI? Just a guess. Do you think?
I mean, if the Lions Club is talking about, running, doing things against government, probably, but that's not happening.
Oh, right. So the FBI would only be communicating if they thought that these organizations were a danger.
No.
Or they had people saying that the organizations were a danger. So there are informants at the Moose. There are informants at, that's what you're saying. No, you just said if they think that these groups, or if the groups are suggesting doing violence. That's what you said.
No.
Okay, so give me the situation where the FBI has an informant in a group that they're talking to on a weekly basis, but it has nothing to do with illegal natures or violence. Or
Can you drop me a link about the weekly basis? Can you drop me a weekly basis link about this? Because that is not information that I had found.
I'll see if I can find it. I don't know if I'll have it, but I'll post it to you later today. Julie Kelly posted
because again, like I said, the information I found, it sounded like it wasn't like a one-off thing, right? Except for Rashid. Rashid seems to be a one-off thing, but it doesn't look like it's like weekly contacts and like every single little thing that's done is being fed to the FBI. Like I don't know what information the FBI was getting. So for me, when I don't know, I default to what is the most reasonable explanation. And the most reasonable explanation to me is that they weren't given all the information, or they might have been given information, but didn't raise to the level of being able to act on the kind of things you said that you would like to see to stop a plot such as this.
We don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to kind of explain to everyone actual common sense of this as opposed to the shilling that you're doing, right? If the FBI had 8 informants from a particular organization that were talking to them and talking about violence and things leading up to January 6th, so violence in areas like Portland or violence in other places, and the FBI was also aware that these groups were mobilizing to come on January 6th, the FBI was hearing that there was potential for violence, or in this case, an insurrection, which is what I'm going to finish here. An insurrection, as they were claiming, right? It is beggars' belief that the FBI would say, our hands are tied. We can't even tell Capital City Police. We can't do anything. There's nothing we can do. What did they say?
But they did warn Capitol Police of various groups wanting to come in and commit violence.
That's not what the article you linked before said. What they said was they warned Capitol Police. There was one agent that talked to people at Capitol Police and said there was a message board that we saw where one person was suggesting violence.
It wasn't one agent. It was in the bulletin, and the bulletin is supposed to be on the way the bulletin works is that it goes to the highest people of various organizations to be like, this is our threat. This is our threat assessment. Our threat assessment says X, Y, and Z. It's not going to be it's not going to say we think that Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers is going to come in and try to kill somebody. It's not going to be detailed like that. It's going to say we have information that white supremacist groups and militia groups and other groups that are on our radar through various kind of methods such as open source, informants, or whatever, are going to have a plan to go to the Capitol and actually enact violence. And that's what the bulletin said. It was
it's not what the bulletin said, and it's not what the bulletin said. So much so that, and again, what the bulletin did was it talked about a hypothetical situation, but it didn't talk about the strength of the evidence. We're talking about a difference between the bulletin suggesting that they had someone on a message board, a person that suggested that there could be some sort of violence.
It wasn't a person.
Between 8 informants.
It was various groups.
Several people. Okay, so I just want to be clear. So the FBI, there is not a rally that could ever occur in today's world that the FBI couldn't theoretically say, we went on a social media board and heard some people that might attend this rally saying that some violence could happen. That's a different level level of analysis of we have informants that are
But they're
telling us
not-
there's an
They're not
insurrection
going to say
occurring. That is a different.
They're not going to say that.
Okay,
But they're
and
not
I'll
gonna say
pause
that,
you here.
ever.
I'll pause you here. I'll pause you here and finish. So then the FBI is corrupt because if the FBI knew that there was a potential insurrection occurring and they neglected to inform the people at the Capitol Police and other places that there
that's
was a
not what
potential
happened.
insurrection, that is what happened based on your own language. You said not only is that what happened, you said they would never. Again, you literally. Here's the two statements you just made. They would never say there's a potential insurrection. When I say the fact that they wouldn't say there's a
that's
potential
not what I
insurrection,
said.
you say
because
no,
you're-
that's not
you're
what would
going-
happen. That's
you're
not what.
you're
That's
going.
not
You're
what would happen.
going a
That's what you
mile a
said.
minute, so you didn't. You're going a mile a minute.
No,
so you
I
didn't
heard
actually
exactly
hear
what you said. Real quick,
No.
did they tell?
I said.
I'll just ask you this: Did the FBI tell Capital City Police, Sergeant Arms, etc., that there was a potential insurrection occurring?
They told the sergeant of arms, Capitol Police, other people through the bulletin that there was the possibility of coordinated violence in order to disrupt the peaceful transition.
So they didn't say that. So they did say, and so the Capital City Police chose not to act.
No. Well, I mean, chose it. Again, it's one of those situations where people literally resign because they fucked up. That's why That's why the timelines matter.
This is
so
it's the double standard that says it's the double standard that's totally ridiculous.
It's not a double standard.
It's the double standard that's totally ridiculous.
I am saying,
again,
no,
like the idea that it's just a fuck up. It's just a fuck up. The FBI had informants telling them an insurrection was coming, but they couldn't do anything about it. Now, other times we could see when the FBI hears of credible threats that are occurring, they act in very stronger ways. And then they did kind of tell Capitol Police, but Capitol Police, they just dropped the ball. Again, this is something I talk about in the channel a lot. What you see from these people that are shills and defend this corruption is they always default to
it's not defending
incompetence.
corruption.
They always default to incompetence.
It's not
they didn't
defending.
know. Just
incompetence.
it is. Imagine that you're in charge of the Capital City Police, and the FBI tells you that there's a potential insurrection coming, and you're like, you know what? Yeah, we don't need increased defense. We don't. You already know hundreds of thousands of people are coming. What happened then? You go ahead.
If you release a bulletin that comes out on the day before that this is supposed to happen, and that bulletin says that there are X number of groups that are planning a violent attack, and you plan for X number of groups planning a violent attack, and not an additional 4,000 people coming from the Trump rally, then you're going to get overwhelmed and not be properly prepared for it, which is what happened. That's why timelines matter. And because they didn't properly prepare for it, because they weren't expecting an additional 10,000 people there, they had enough police officers to deal with some violent groups, not 10,000 people or however many people were at the Capitol. They had enough people to deal with that, but not the additional 10,000.
This answer makes no sense. What are you talking about 10,000? What are you talking about 10,000?
The people from the Trump rally that came to the Capitol in addition to the violent groups. So if you're only planning for
how many people were there total?
I don't know.
Like 100,000 or something?
Was it? I don't think it was that many.
It was way more than 10,000, right?
Well, let me look that up, because I mean, either way, let's say the number is 100,000, right? They didn't plan for 100,000 people to show up at the Capitol and like start to try to go into. Well,
they knew that huge numbers of people were going to be at the Capitol grounds, maybe not in the Capitol building, correct?
They knew people were showing up to a rally for Trump,
right? And they knew that people
they planned for that. And that's why they had police guards and the National Guard directing that traffic.
And they knew there were groups within that were trying to overthrow the government.
They knew that there was groups that were not necessarily in that, but maybe separate from that or whatever, that were planning on to come with violence. If you go to the article, if you look this up, the people that 3 people resigned from their post for failing to do the correct thing.
So so they know that a bunch of people were coming. Please let me finish. You gave your timeline. You gave your timeline, please. They knew all these people were coming, and they knew
they didn't know.
Violent,
that's the thing.
They did. Holy shit!
They knew. They did not. They did not know that the people from the Eclipse were going to walk over to the Capitol to also do this information.
Okay, so I understand the need to filibuster and change the subject, or maybe it's that you can't.
It's not a change of subject. This is the same fucking thing.
Like, I understand it. I understand. So I'll reiterate. They knew a bunch of people were coming to a rally and would be at the Capitol. You saying, but they didn't know they were going into the Capitol. Right, got that.
No, they knew a bunch of people they were going to come from. They did not know that they were going to come from. Please let me finish.
I'm not going to leave you filibuster the time anymore on this. I'm not going to leave you filibuster.
This isn't a filibuster. We can go another 15, 20 minutes. I don't give a shit.
They knew a bunch of people were coming to the grounds. They knew that a bunch of people were going to be there. They knew that embedded within. I'm just going to mute you.
No, that's not what they all
I'm
did.
just going to mute you.
That's fine.
They knew that people were coming, right? They knew that a large swath of people were coming. They knew embedded in that group were people actively trying to overthrow the United States government. And they said to themselves, we don't need that much security. Well, nope. We don't need that much.
Nope.
Because we only think that there's
violence.
2 or 3 people. There's only 2 or 3 people, or a very small number that are actually trying to overthrow. So even though we understand how riots work, and it only takes a handful of people to start violence and things could get out of hand, we don't need people. We don't need more security. It'll be all right.
Rob?
It'll be all right.
Am I muted?
No.
Oh shit! I thought I was muted. I was talking to my audience. My bad.
It worked then.
Anyways, so let's save this for example. If you are, how far is the ellipse from the Capitol? How many miles?
Is it like 1.5, something to that effect?
Like I think 2 sounds about right. I would give it. I'd say 2, about 2
It
miles.
took them
right?
at like a half hour to walk, right?
Yeah. So if you were planning for a bunch of people to show up the ellipse, and then a small group of people to show up at the Capitol, and not the additional people at the ellipse to go to the Capitol, and you only have the police officers needed for the small group, you're going to get overrun by the bunch of people that are coming from the ellipse.
No, let me explain.
Do you
if
agree
I'm a
with
police, no, I don't, and let me explain why. Because
Okay,
if I'm in charge of police and I'm aware that a large group of people are showing up somewhere for a rally, right? And I'm aware that within that group is a non-insignificant amount of people trying to overthrow the government. I'm not going to say, I assume that the large group of people will totally be reasonable, and even if a violent riot starts
they didn't.
I would say even if they planned on coming and just like detonating a bomb, you would need increased police just to protect the mass amounts of innocent civilians that would be there.
And they had those spread throughout DC and helping direct traffic with the National Guard as well as other police officers. And then they had a smaller contingent to deal with the group of people that they were expecting to be at the Capitol to help to do the insurrection violence stuff, because they didn't have the extreme detailed information that you're assuming that the FBI was going to give to them.
Then the FBI is wrong for not giving that. You can't have it both ways. Either this isn't. I think this is funny. I just want to give your overview here. It's a global overview. On one hand, you say that the FBI could get FISA warrants and investigate any sort of allegation, even if it's paid for by opposition, because the allegation is so serious. They could violate your 4th Amendment. They could get a secret warrant to spy on you without your knowledge, accusing you of being a spy merely because there was an accusation. And you say the allegation is so serious and it could harm our country so much that yes, the FBI, even if it's the president, the FBI. Right. But if domestic terrorists are talking about overthrowing the government, then the FBI's hands are tied. There's nothing we can do about that.
Again, I don't know the exact information that the FBI received. So I can't say how much the FBI fucked up. Maybe the FBI fucked up immensely. Maybe it didn't fuck up all that much. I don't know the exact information. Do you know the exact information they were given by Stuart Rhodes, or not Stuart Rhodes, but Whitmer and other people? Do you know the exact information that was given? Is that public?
Do you know the exact information about anything that's ever occurred in life? The exact?
Well, no, but
of course.
Okay.
Now,
I'm
here's
not
what I
trying
do
to be
know.
literal.
I knew that. Right. So what I do know is in the trial, they used the information that they received from these people to say that they were aware that these groups were planning an insurrection beforehand. And they said that they were talking to these people. Now, if these people, informants, were actively talking to them,
It wasn't just the vice president was talking to them beforehand. And if that vice president was telling them about potential violence in Portland, but covering up the fact that his group was planning an insurrection on January 6th, then that vice president should be in prison for the rest of their life. Right? For actively acting like an informant, but hiding the most important information, which was that they were overthrowing the government the following day. That seems like a big deal, but he wasn't charged. I don't know what information it was.
Right.
So it could have been a combination of him not giving that information to the FBI. It could have been him giving information to the FBI, and it wasn't enough to go on because the information might have not been detailed. Like I said, if you have, this is why I do the analogy that I did. If you have like plans with command and control and all the other stuff that goes with that, you're like, breaking in points, etc. That's going to be, obviously we have to investigate this. We have all the plans. But if you get a person to be like, hey man, it sounds like we might be trying to plan an insurrection. Like, okay, like that's not going to be enough information. necessarily.
I just said
It depends on
your
the level of
worldview is
detail.
amazing to me. On one hand, if you're running for president of the United States and someone pays for information that says you like to get peed on by hookers and you're working with Russians to win an election, please let me finish. You say, yeah, secret FISA warrant, absolutely. You don't even have to verify that information. That's such a serious allegation that the FBI needs to immediately. But on the other hand, if you're a domestic terrorist group saying we're plotting on this specific day to overthrow the government, then the FBI is like, well, we can't violate your Fourth Amendment. We can't even plan that and talk about the severity of this. Even if we don't spy on you more, we can't even impart the severity of this to Capital City Police and to other agencies because that would be a violation.
I have to assume they imparted the severity that they had.
I assume you are assuming.
No, I have to assume that they are going to impart the information that the severity of what they actually had. They're not going to say we have an informant embedded with a group that says X, Y, and Z is going to happen, because that's going to put the informant's life potentially in danger. They're not going to do that. This is absurd. The idea that the FBI wouldn't impart the significant, because if I'm getting this memo I get probably all the time, I get memos that say, oh, there could potentially be violence at this rally. I'm going to treat that differently than we have people at the highest level of this organization telling us that tomorrow they're going to commit an insurrection. Of course they would to Capital City Police. So your argument is, had they told Capital City Police that, Capital City Police may have linked the information to the terrorist? No.
So they can't tell them?
It's not about necessarily leaking the information to the terrorist, dude. It's about what any of that could happen. Like, the bulletin's not fucking private.
I can't believe that you're honestly going to suggest this. So, but just say hypothetically, if our FBI finds out that Al-Qaeda, let's make it a domestic. If the FBI finds out that the KKK tomorrow is attempting to assassinate Hakeem Jeffries, your argument would be they can't contact Hakeem Jeffries security detail and Capital City Police and say, my God, we have specific evidence that this specific organization, a vice president of that organization, please, let me finish. Please, no, they didn't. They sent a fucking memo. Yeah, again, how many times have you said this? I say they should have did this. You say they would never do that. They can't do it. And I say, so you're telling me they wouldn't do that? And you say, but they did.
No, they're not.
They're not going
to say the specific organization in charge and the specific organization's number two guy. We have that information.
They're not going to say that. They're not just going to put a fucking bulletin. They're not just going to put a bulletin up. They're going to go and say, this is a fucking serious threat in your life. This is serious. This wasn't just put a bulletin up and hope you listen to it. It depends on the information. So I'll just wrap it up by saying this. It's clear when you see these shills that will defend any sort of this corruption from the FBI. The story is very simple. The FBI, first we were told that we were conspiracy theorists for saying that they had informants. We haven't even got to Ray Epps and people like that. For some reason, Ray Epps was the only person that we see actively telling people to break into the Capitol.
He probably turned state evidence after the fact. So why would he be in prison? We do state evidence things all the time. Gang rapists get fucking off on this shit by being able to turn state evidence on people.
So then the FBI lied to Congress when they said that he wasn't an FBI informant? Members of Congress said that?
Turning state evidence after the fact isn't necessary. I don't know the timeline. So if they turn state evidence after
we got the
fact.
blue-haired non-violent people that are locked up. We got them. We got the blue-haired grandmas. But we allowed the guy that was instrumental in telling people at the moment of breach to break in. Yes. You don't think he was?
Well, I mean, he did tell people to hey, we need to go into the Capitol.
And he was right there whispering into the ear of the first. Well, I would say the fact that he was whispering into the ear to the first person to break down a gate would be instrumental. As it happened. You don't think so?
What do you think? Why? No. Why do you think? I'm not saying he wasn't.
So over 3,000 people have been investigated for January 6th. And one of the guys that was telling people to break in and was literally at the front line when it was broken in, one of the dozens of people
you believe this guy's an FBI agent?
I believe he was a FBI agent or informant beforehand.
So you believe he was an FBI agent or informant beforehand?
Yes.
Before January 6th happened, he was telling these people, telling the FBI. You don't think that it was after the fact?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you.
Why do you believe that?
Because even the day before, people were calling him a Fed. It is evident that he was encouraging people to do this. It is evident that he was one of the top people there.
But why would that make him a Fed?
Because because it falls in line with examples of what we've seen the feds do, such as with the Whitmer kidnapping case, where they encourage people to break the law through the use of informants and then arrest those people to increase the side that they want to win politically, just like they did with the Whitmer case, and to also increase their prestige and power. You're saying it would never happen? What did they do with the Whitmer case?
The Whitmer case, they had three embedded actual agents there that and everybody was trying to turn on everybody else. Yeah, everybody was trying to turn on everybody else in order to get.
And did they not? And what are the trials? Did they not? When someone was not found guilty, did they not say that they actually had to train the people to use? By the way, the FBI does this all the time. They did it with Muslim Americans all the time. They set these plots up. They trained them. They convinced them, even against their will. They were like, people would be like, "No, I don't want to do that," and they'd say, "Well, you should. That's what they did with the Whitmer case.
Okay, you believe that? You believe that's what they did with the Whitmer case? Okay, that's fine.
Well, it's not that I believe. It's been proven. That's what they did.
Okay.
The plot would not have occurred if it were not for the FBI encouraging people to do it. Why would the FBI do that?
And yet they were still found guilty.
Some weren't.
Yeah. Well,
so what's that prove?
Everybody was. I think everybody was on the state level, but not at the federal level.
So what's that prove? And
I mean, it proves that they shouldn't have done it. It wasn't fully entrapment.
What do you mean? If I entrap you to use drugs, you still shouldn't have done it.
Well, entrapment means that you end up getting off of the charges most of the time.
No, just because a jury finds you innocent or guilty doesn't mean that it was actually entrapment or not.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That's fine.
Nonetheless, why would the FBI do that? Sure, those guys shouldn't have done that anyways. And why would the FBI intentionally do that?
Well, you already said it, right? Prestige, trying to stop things.
So
finding people that might be potentially radicalized and heading them off to the path, so to speak, potentially.
Yeah, well, they seem to do that most of the time. Well, not most. Many of the cases where they stop terrorists, we often find out that it was the FBI creating the terrorist itself, creating the plot.
Yeah, it was the FBI gets some sort of information from a person saying something stupid online, and then they go and pressure them and see if they can actually be radicalized, and then they get arrested.
Right. So then we have the situation of Ray Epps. First, we were told that there were FBI.
Why do you assume that Ray? So I need to know why you assume that Ray Epps specifically is a Fed, just because.
Let me finish, and I will.
That's good.
Right. So first, we could see the situation with the FBI. We were told that there weren't informants embedded, that was a crazy conspiracy theory. Now we know there were informants, including at some of the highest levels. We could see that it's not.
Sorry, say that again.
Yes. First, we were told repeatedly that there weren't informants embedded in these organizations that the FBI was talking to. We were told that was a conspiracy theory. Now we find out when they
who said that?
That was one of the claims that Democrats made over and over again. It didn't happen.
Which Democrats? Democrats? Are you talking about people online, or are you talking about specific people in positions of power?
Both.
Because people online, I don't really give a shit. Like, people are dumb, dude. Like that. Okay, so
both.
Which Democrat?
I don't have their names in front of me right now. I don't need to have their names. The rewriting of history for people like you is something that you often want to do. I assume you also
I don't need to recreate history. I just need to know where you're coming
from. Tomorrow you'll be saying, who said that Twitter didn't shadow ban? We all know. Yes, that's the game the Democrats play.
Actually, Twitter admitted that shadow banning back in 2018.
They testified in front of Congress that it didn't occur.
And their definition of what shadow banning was permanently removed. No. Like you're laughing and you think you got me, but Twitter played word games. I'm not saying Twitter didn't play word games. Do you understand?
That's great. They admitted that they shadow banned, but then when they said they didn't shadow ban, that's because they used a different semantic term. Then what are you saying they admitted they shadow banned? If you're saying they played word games, then surely you wouldn't be rushing to their defense saying they admitted they shadow banned.
No. I'm saying that they admitted to shadow banning. But they said it. They defined what they. Okay, colloquially, everybody that said what shadow banning was like deprioritizing, making you can't go viral, making your post appear less on people's feeds. Right?
I'm not interested. I'm not interested in your
Is that how
bullshit?
No. Is that how?
I'm not interested.
Is that
how? I'm not interested in playing your semantic game. I don't give a shit.
This is not a semantic game. I'm saying that Twitter played a semantic game.
Not interested in your bullshit defense.
I'm not defending them. Twitter.
I'm not interested in your bullshit. I'm not interested in your bullshit defense. They didn't admit that they shadow banned people. They went in front of Congress and said they didn't shadow ban people. You saying, but if you read the fine print, actually they did admit because they called it something different than shadow banning. Fuck you. You're a shill. Nope.
It's not shilling. That's me calling them out.
No, it's not, because
No, that's
you
me calling
wouldn't
them
have
out. Yes, it is.
No, this is how I would have said that. You ready? If you'd have said, oh, next you'll be saying that Twitter did, I would have said, well, here's what they did, the slimy fuckers, while they were publicly telling everyone they don't shadow ban.
That's just because we have
in
a
the
different...
background, what they were doing was actually admitting the steps that are necessary for shadow ban they were actually doing, but they were lying
That's
to people,
what happened.
publicly telling them they weren't shadow banning. I wouldn't say, actually they did tell everyone they shadow banned. No, they didn't. They didn't admit that. They specifically said we don't.
That's a semantic argument and a difference in debate style.
Nope.
That I'm going to say.
No, it's not. It is
we are actually agreement.
It is what shills. It is what shills like you do. That's what it is.
How am I shilling for them when I said that they admitted to it and it was fucking stupid?
They did,
How is that
because by
showing?
saying that, because the context of what we're talking about is, I'm saying you constantly see this where something occurs. Like, for example, we saw publicly that Twitter was saying we don't shadow ban. They testified it in front of Congress. We saw that they said it so often. They also were talking to people in the media that were reporting Twitter told us that they don't shadow ban, right? And then you saying, actually, they admitted that they shadow ban. That's exactly the type of bullshit I'm talking about. It was the same thing with, it's the exact, it's like this. They didn't spy on Trump. They didn't spy on Trump. So they didn't have spies. Oh, really? They didn't have spies on Trump. What about George Papadopoulos? There was an FBI agent by the name of Stephen Halper that actually introduced a honeypot scheme with a woman with the alias Azra Turk. And you know what? You know what the Democrats said? That's not a spy. That's a confidential human source.
No, that's playing a semantic game that I'm not playing.
What you're doing is playing the semantic game that they admitted that they shadow banned when they didn't. They publicly said the exact opposite.
Okay. This is a difference in debate tactics and a difference in the way we talk. Okay. I am not shilling for Twitter. What Twitter did was fucked up. I don't agree with shadow banning. That's why I called Musk out when he said he was going to continue to shadow ban people, which I thought was fucking hilarious. But what they did say was, we define shadow banning this way. But we also, for the purpose of conversation and debate, we do everything you think shadow banning is. That's what I meant by saying they admitted to shadow banning. Is anybody going to look into that? No, and that's why the semantic game and the stuff that they're talking about is funny.
I got to wrap up, so I'll just say this, and then I'll leave you have the last word, right? Like, it's evident when you ask why Ray Epps, because we could see that he was engaged in behavior that an informant that was advocating for people to do something like this would do, and so much so that the audience was calling him a Fed. We could see that for some reason, even though he at point blank, we have more video that he was engaged in the worst possible things that people claim to care about. For some reason, even though he was on the FBI's most wanted list for some point, 14th, I believe. Not most wanted list overall, but most wanted list to question for January 6th. He was mysteriously taken off that list. We could see through the fact that the FBI's behaved in past behaviors like this, such as with the Whitmer case and the litany of other cases. All of it adds up that the most possible scenario is that Ray Epps was a Fed. Nonetheless, in addition to that, even if he wasn't a Fed, what we could see is the narrative doesn't make sense. Either the FBI had informants and were aware that there was a possible, quote, insurrection that was about to occur, and either they told Capitol Police and other people, and those people chose to not put secure detail there to stop it, or the FBI did not impart the seriousness. Either way, what seems likely to have happened is, one, they know that it's bullshit that it's not an insurrection, which it's not. By the way, one other thing I forgot to add. The fact that we could see that the FBI's disparate behaviors from May 30th, which you yourself admit, May 30th, 2020 was an insurrection. The disparate behavior from there compared to January 6th, 2021 proves that the FBI is either incompetent, which is bullshit, or corrupt and had their finger on the pulse and wanted the Democrats to win and wanted Trump. But either of those two scenarios, we can see that it shows a pattern that the FBI was unwilling to engage in a way that was by the book, that would have been a competent thing. So all of that evidence seems to suggest that it's most likely that they knew that Ray Epps was a Fed and others, and they encouraged their informants to encourage this illegal behavior to benefit the side they wanted to win politically. Or if not, they were aware that this possible thing was going to occur and they did not act properly. They allowed it to occur because they knew it would be beneficial to their side. Or lastly, that they know it's bullshit, that it wasn't an insurrection, that it was a riot, and that people got out of hand, but they're exploiting it to massively increase their powers and to go after people they politically don't like. The truth is, it's probably some combination of all three. The fact that you will defend, right, that the FBI had forewarning of this, but say, no, they couldn't do anything. Their hands were tied. They couldn't get into specifics with people. But at the same time, you think that any accusation that is bought and paid for by an opposition opponent justifies the FBI spying on people through the FISA system, just proves that you're engaged in a double standard yourself. and you will always engage in those double standards to defend any sort of corruption from the FBI, just like in our previous discussion, which I don't remember, but if it went as you claimed, where you're trying to make claims that, no, I was okay with the FBI not verifying FISA information to spy on someone, and I would be okay with it if Trump's team did too. It's 99% chance you're bad faith, that you're actually cheering the corruption because it benefits your side, but if you're not, then you're someone that is so incompetent and so ignorant on the situation that it warrants pointing out just how sad it is. You seem like a nice guy, but I just think it's pathetic to defend this level of corruption. The last thing is, when we talked about policy beforehand, and I said reasonable people could disagree on policy, but when it comes to matters of corruption, when people are making excuses for the boot being put down in your throat and things like that, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. And we will never get to the system that people like you want, because you will always cheer the corruption, which eventually will come for you and people that you support politically. So, but go ahead, I'll give you the last word.
Okay. So from my perspective, what happened for January 6th is a combination of misinformation coming from at least 3 people within the Capital City Police, as well as maybe the FBI not being forceful enough. I'll give Rob you that one, being forceful enough about what was being detailed there. The Capital City Police planned for a small, not a small necessarily, but didn't plan for hundreds of thousands of people to show up from the Ellipse to the Capitol building, 2-mile hike down the road in order to get to the Capitol building to protest. And once those groups culminated together, the mob was used as a kind of a weapon against the Capital City Police, as well as whoever else was on the ground at the time, in order to try to overrun the security system that was there, as well as stop this peaceful transition of power, hence the call for an insurrection. Capital City Police did plan for people to be in some of the more vulnerable positions, the tunnel being one of those, and that tunnel was overran by more people than what they were expecting. That was a very violent fight that was happened there. That's where some of the most damage was done to Capital City police officers. Not saying people died from that. That is not what I'm saying. But there was serious injuries done from their concussions, things like that. Some tasing that happened as well. Because of that, you had people resign for those issues, as well as the FBI then going back to some of the informants they did have to get them to further turn state's evidence to do the trials that we have. And that's why Stuart Rhodes, as well as others, have been found guilty of seditious conspiracy. And that's where we're at. Rob, appreciate you letting me be on the show. It was a good conversation, even though we don't agree about this particular issue.
Can you shout out your channel? You want to make sure you do that before you leave.
Sure. I am Cypher, and I run the Crowdsourced Politics channel, YouTube, Twitch. We do a bunch of different stuff, different debates like this, as well as policy discussions. So you can find it there.
Yeah, I mean, and I hope people check you out. I think it's important to talk to people that you disagree with. It's frustrating, though. You're a dime a dozen of people on the left that make excuses for these sorts of corruption. Again, we're looking at this in the vacuum just from the behavior of the FBI, but again, you can see the massive disparity. I can't even begin to imagine the sort of cognitive dissonance to actually think that there were 2 insurrections, one May 30th, 2020 and one January 6th, 2021, and say that, yeah, both warranted similar treatment. Maybe it happened. I mean, that's incredible.
I assume that it did, so I didn't look into it.
But that's my bias. But it's not just the FBI. It's everything. It's Capitol Hill. It's Congress. It's media. It couldn't be more disparate. The behavior at every single institutional level. And I'm just saying that, I would encourage you to ask yourself why that is. Why did the FBI massively treat it different? Why did the media? Why did the politicians? To me, it seems to me like that's when it turned the debate for me, because it honestly seems like you're not being genuine. It seems to me that you're bullshitting. I think it was an insurrection.
I'm being genuine. I assume that the FBI went through, or not necessarily FBI, whatever jurisdiction agency at the time. So it could have been Capital City Police, could have been the FBI. It depends on where the location is, right? If it was a federal building, yada yada. For example, right? I don't want to keep you on too much longer, but the courthouse that was set on fire during the riots of 2020, right? That was FBI jurisdiction, so the FBI investigated that one because it was a federal courthouse. Whereas the state courthouses that got set fire and the police station that got set fire was a state function, not an FBI function. That's all I meant by that.
Well, why wouldn't the FBI be involved?
Why wouldn't the FBI be involed? Where
May 30th,
at Jan 6?
2020.
May 30th.
May
I assume that they were,
So
but I
White
don't know if
House.
they had the. I don't assume that they have exclusive jurisdiction over that area, right?
Well,
So that's all I'm saying. So whatever federal agency it is, that's all I'm saying. I don't want to say the FBI should have been the one to do it if it's not the FBI that's supposed to be the one investigating that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, it was the White House lawn.
Sure.
Okay.
And
right.
there was CPB officers and everybody else. But one thing we didn't get to talk on, and I think this is where we can agree, anybody that is still sitting in jail from January 6th that doesn't have a court date set up yet, that's a travesty, and they should actually have a court date, and none of them should be in solitary confinement. We didn't get to talk about that. That's desperate stuff that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and you're right. That's bad. But all right, I do have to go. My wife's getting pissed. I got to get down and put this tree up. But I do thank you for calling in. I do. Maybe we could talk at some point in the future, but I just hope that you ruminate over why there is a disparate action at every institutional level from one insurrection to the other. That's all. Okay. So thanks so much for calling in. All right, take it easy.
Yep, no problem. Bye.
All right, to my audience, give me 1 second. I do have to wrap up. I really do. My wife's going to kill me. So I got to get down there. And she's probably watching right now. So she probably hears me saying my wife's going to kill me, which will get me even more trouble. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Maybe I should be a little more polite. But, I mean, I thought everything went fine until we got to that point. Where it's just like, I mean, I don't know how to deal with people like that. I just like the idea of like, oh, yeah, if there's any accusation, then you should be able to get a FISA warrant to even spy on the president. What? Even if it was paid for by his opposition. Huh? I would be fine with that, and then the January 6th stuff, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the story's very simple. The FBI had prior knowledge. They didn't, right? There wasn't security there because this is what the Democrats wanted. This is what the FBI wanted. They'd constantly been setting the dominoes up, hoping that there would be some sort of violence so they could bring their boot down. It's the same reason that they set up the Whitmer people and then charged them right before the 2020 election. If you look at this situation, not just at the specific, and every single time say, well, the FBI theoretically, they just made mistakes. And that's basically what it comes down to. I talk about this all the time. The Democrat defense of the FBI is constantly, every time you point that they do something terrible, they're like, well, it's incompetence. Someone got fired. That's it. They resigned. That's it. Incompetence. So ultimately he seemed like a decent guy though. So maybe I should be a little easier on him, but I mean, it's a shill. He's brainwashed. It's ridiculous. Anyways, next time you'll see me is probably Monday. Possibility that I'll be doing such an Adams show on Tuesday. Not sure about it. Please, as always, I know I don't have to tell my audience this, but I honestly do, despite what you may think of Crowdsourced Politics and Cypher there and what I said about him, he was game enough to come on. Don't treat him like garbage or anything like that. He was more sane than 90% of the people I talked to. So, but I know I have a great audience and they're never shitty or anything like that. But it's okay to say you wrecked him, you won, blah, blah, blah. But, we're not the type of people that brigade people and, try to get them canceled or, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we've built that audience. So he's welcome to come back some other time. I didn't feel it was, not worth my while or anything like that. I would be happy to talk about him again and I wish him nothing but the best. But I hope that he seriously thinks about, some of the things that he's talking about. So, all right. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. I'm going to go eat some specialty cheese I bought and set up a Christmas tree. So thank you so much for listening. Please check out my Rumble channel. The link, someone will put the link down there. Check that out. That's what I'm pushing now. I am live streaming to Rumble now. So if you're on Rumble and you're watching me, I do apologize that I was unable to read your comments. I need to find out how to get them. It's difficult. I have to go into HTML and stuff, and I'm an idiot. So, all right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you all soon. And as always, have a good one.